What if the objects we see behind glass cases in museums are not silent relics, but are instead waiting to speak? What profound stories would they tell us if we could only understand their language? Across the globe, from the sun-baked deserts of Egypt to the dense jungles of Central America, our ancestors left behind more than just tools and treasures. They embedded secrets into the very fabric of their creations, crafting hidden messages that have slumbered for centuries, even millennia. These are not mere scratches or accidental marks. They are deliberate codes, symbolic languages, and intricate designs placed there with intention, a whisper across time meant for future generations to discover. Today, we begin the greatest treasure hunt in human history, one that does not require a map to a physical location, but a key to the past itself. This is a journey into the heart of historical mystery, where every artifact is a puzzle box and every symbol a potential clue. We often think of history as a story already written, its chapters closed and its meanings clear, but that is an illusion. The truth is that history is a living, breathing narrative that we are still actively deciphering. For every answer we uncover, a dozen new questions emerge from the shadows. These hidden messages are the ultimate proof of that ongoing conversation. They were created by people who faced the same fundamental human emotions we do: love, fear, ambition, a desire for immortality, and they found ingenious ways to communicate those feelings beyond their own lifetimes. Some messages were meant to be found, serving as warnings or guides. Others were concealed to protect sacred knowledge from the uninitiated or to hide truths from conquering empires. Each one represents a voice from the void, a desperate attempt to bridge the gap between their world and ours. So prepare to look at history with new eyes. In this exploration, we will uncover 30 of the most incredible secrets ever found embedded in historical artifacts. We will examine the cryptic symbols on a medieval sword that may reveal the true identity of its legendary owner. We will peer into the seemingly random patterns on an ancient tapestry and find a star chart accurate enough to navigate by. We will listen for the faint echoes in the architecture of a forgotten temple, where the alignment of stones speaks a language of celestial worship. This is not just a list of fascinating facts, it is an invitation to become a detective of the distant past, to join a quest for understanding that challenges everything we thought we knew about the people who came before us. The artifacts are ready to talk. The only question is, are we ready to listen? Our journey into the world of hidden messages begins not on land, but at the bottom of the sea, where a storm-tossed discovery would forever change our perception of ancient ingenuity. In the year 1900, sponge divers off the coast of the tiny Greek island of Antikythera were forced to take shelter from a sudden squall. When the waters calmed, they decided to explore the depths below them, expecting to find perhaps a rich sponge bed. Instead, they stumbled upon the staggering wreck of a Roman cargo ship, its hull filled with marble and bronze statues, a treasure trove silently preserved for over 2,000 years. Among the shattered statues and corroded artifacts hauled to the surface was an unassuming, lumpy piece of bronze encased in centuries of marine fossilization. It seemed insignificant compared to the graceful sculptures, just a mysterious, heavily corroded lump. For decades, it sat in the back rooms of the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, a puzzling enigma that no one could quite explain. It wasn't until the 1950s that a scientist using early X-ray technology peered inside the rock-like mass and saw something that should not have existed. He saw gears, intricate, precisely cut bronze gears, arranged in a complex configuration that belonged not to the ancient world, but to the clockwork of the Renaissance. This object, now known as the Antikythera Mechanism, has been rightly called the world's first analog computer. But its true hidden message is not just in its existence, it is encoded within the very mathematics of its design. The device is a breathtakingly sophisticated astronomical calculator, operated by a hand crank that turned at least 30 interlocking bronze gears. These gears moved a series of dials and pointers on the front and back of the mechanism, predicting the movements of the sun, the moon, and the 5 planets known to the ancient Greeks. One of its most profound secrets was its ability to forecast lunar and solar eclipses with remarkable accuracy, not as random acts of the gods, but as predictable, calculable celestial events. This reveals a level of scientific understanding that historians simply did not believe was possible in the 1st or 2nd century before the Common Era. The message hidden in its gears is a radical one. The ancient world was far more technologically advanced than we ever imagined, but the mechanism's hidden language extends beyond its mechanical genius. Its case was covered in tiny, meticulously engraved Greek inscriptions, a sort of extensive user manual etched in bronze. These inscriptions were not just labels, they were a sophisticated astronomical guide, correlating the celestial cycles with the calendars that governed ancient Greek society, including the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games. This complex inscription system transformed the device from a mere calculator into a philosophical statement. It encoded the Greek belief in a cosmos governed by orderly mathematical principles, a cosmos that could be understood, predicted, and even replicated by human intellect and craftsmanship. For centuries, this knowledge was lost, its message silenced by the sea and the passage of time. The Antikythera Mechanism forces us to reconsider the entire narrative of technological progress. It whispers to us that brilliance is not always linear, that advanced knowledge can be lost, and that the voices of the past may still have vital lessons to teach us about our own place in the universe. From the depths of the sea, we now travel to the island of Crete, where another artifact of profound mystery was not found in a shipwreck but buried in the ruins of a palace. In the year 1908, archaeologists excavating the Minoan palace of Phaistos made a discovery that was, in its own way, just as baffling as the Antikythera mechanism. It was a small, fired clay disc roughly the size of a small plate, and it was unlike anything else ever uncovered from the ancient world. Both sides of this disc are covered with a continuous spiral of strange pictographic symbols. There are humans and animals, plants and tools, and abstract shapes, all perfectly stamped into the clay. The immediate assumption was that this was a form of writing, a text meant to be read. But over a century later, that is where the mystery deepens, because the message of the Phaistos Disc remains one of history's most stubborn secrets, completely undeciphered. The hidden message is not just what it says, but the very fact that it exists at all. The symbols themselves are a captivating puzzle. Arranged in groups, they seem to tell a story, or perhaps record a law, or even encode a religious hymn. Some researchers believe the spiral pattern, moving from the outer edge inward, suggests a journey to a sacred center. Others see the repetition of certain symbol groups as a possible poetic rhythm. But without a Rosetta Stone, a parallel text in a known language, every attempt at translation remains speculative. Is it a king's proclamation, a farmer's calendar, a prayer to a forgotten goddess? Each theory is compelling, yet none has achieved consensus. This enduring silence is the first layer of its mystery. The disc is a message in a bottle from the Minoan civilization, a people who built magnificent palaces and dominated the Mediterranean, yet whose language we still cannot fully understand. It is a locked door, and we have yet to find the key, but the second and perhaps more revolutionary hidden message is not in the symbol's meaning, but in the method of their creation. Each symbol on the Phaistos disc was not carved by hand. Instead, they were stamped into the soft clay using pre-formed movable type seals. This means that over 3,500 years ago, a Minoan artisan had conceived of the principle of printing. They created a set of reusable typefaces, arranged them in a specific order, and pressed them onto the clay to create a reproducible document. This technology would not appear again in human history until the development of movable type printing in China around 1,000 years ago, and later in Europe with Gutenberg in the 15th century. The Phaistos Disc suggests that the idea of printing, of standardizing and replicating text, was born and then lost, a spark of technological genius that flickered out for millennia. This raises a profound question about the nature of progress. Was this a unique, one-off creation, the brilliant invention of a single individual that never caught on? Or was it part of a broader, more sophisticated administrative system that has simply been lost to time, its paper or parchment records long since decayed? The disc's existence forces us to confront the possibility that technological advancement is not a straight, inevitable line upward. Civilizations can reach peaks of innovation only to have that knowledge completely erased by war, natural disaster, or simply the passage of centuries. The Phaistos Disc, therefore, carries a dual message. On one hand, it is a tantalizing, unreadable text, a silent story waiting for its narrator. On the other, it is a monument to a lost technological path, a whisper that our ancestors' ingenuity may have been even more vast and varied than the archaeological record can typically show. It stands as a humble clay disc, yet it challenges the very timeline of human invention. Leaving behind the stamped symbols of the Phaistos Disc, we encounter a book that makes that ancient clay disc seem almost straightforward by comparison. Housed today in the Voynich Rare Book and Manuscript Library at Yale University, the Voynich Manuscript is arguably the most famous unreadable book in the world. Its hidden message is not just in its text, but in the sheer, unnerving totality of its mystery. This 240-page codex, crafted from vellum and dating back to the early 15th century, is written from left to right in a flowing, elegant script that has never been seen anywhere else. Not a single word of it has ever been conclusively deciphered. It is an entire universe of unknown language, accompanied by illustrations that are both detailed and deeply alien. The manuscript is filled with paintings of plants that do not exist on Earth, intricate diagrams of celestial bodies that don't match known astronomy, and countless drawings of small, nude women bathing in a complex, interconnected system of green, tub-like pools. From the moment it re-emerged into history in 1912, when a Polish book dealer named Wilfred Voynich purchased it, it has defied every attempt at understanding, becoming a siren's call for cryptographers, linguists, and conspiracy theorists alike. The botanical section is particularly baffling and forms the core of its enduring intrigue. The pages are lush with illustrations of flora, each root, stem, and leaf rendered with the careful attention of a scientific manual. Yet, botanists who have studied these images universally agree that these species are unidentifiable. Some plants appear to be fantastical composites, like a sunflower blossom attached to a root system that resembles a tulip bulb. Others have leaves and growth patterns that simply defy the laws of plant biology. This presents a fundamental question. Is the author depicting imaginary plants, or are they drawing real ones from a distant, unexplored land, but through a lens of misunderstood description or artistic license? The hidden message here is deeply ambiguous. If the plants are imaginary, then the manuscript might be a work of pure fantasy, perhaps an alchemical text where each plant symbolizes a different substance or spiritual concept. But if they are real, it suggests the author possessed knowledge of a lost ecosystem, a secret herbalist tradition so guarded that it had to be encoded in an indecipherable language. This leads directly to the great debate surrounding the manuscript's origin and purpose. The primary theories are as varied as they are fascinating. The first and most cynical is that it is an elaborate and successful hoax, perhaps created by Voynich himself to generate a lucrative mystery. However, rigorous carbon dating has confirmed the vellum is from the early 1400s, and the ink is consistent with that period, effectively ruling out a modern creation. Another prominent theory posits that it is an encoded medical or herbalist's guide, written in a cipher to protect valuable, potentially dangerous knowledge from falling into the wrong hands. Throughout history, apothecaries and alchemists often used codes to safeguard their recipes. Perhaps the unidentifiable plants are common herbs drawn in a stylized, symbolic way known only to initiates of a secret guild. A more exotic theory suggests it is a text in a constructed language, an early attempt at a philosophical language meant to express pure concepts, or even a personal diary written in a unique cipher so complex that without the key, it is effectively unbreakable. Yet, the most profound hidden message of the Voynich Manuscript may not be linguistic at all. It may be psychological. Consider the immense effort and cost involved in producing such a book in the 15th century. Vellum was expensive, the ink and paints were precious, and the time of a skilled scribe and illustrator was a significant investment. Someone went to a great deal of trouble to create this object. This forces us to ask a more fundamental question about human nature. What drives a person to create something so elaborate that is seemingly designed not to be understood? The purpose might not have been to conceal information from others, but to create a personal artifact of immense mystery and beauty. Perhaps the author, for reasons of their own, be it madness, genius, or spiritual devotion, found solace in the act of creating an entire world contained within a book, a world whose meaning was meant for them alone. The Voynich Manuscript, therefore, stands as a monument to the human desire to create meaning, even if that meaning is forever locked away from everyone else. It is a reminder that some messages are not meant to be delivered, but simply to exist as a testament to the boundless and often inexplicable creativity of the human mind. While a manuscript holds its secrets bound within pages, some messages are so vast they can only be written upon the earth itself. We leave behind the confined mystery of the Voynich Manuscript and journey to the high desert plains of southern Peru, where an entire landscape serves as a canvas for one of history's most monumental and enigmatic creations, the Nazca Lines. Here, the hidden message is not inscribed in clay or ink, but etched into the very skin of the planet. Across nearly 200 square miles of arid plateau, a series of gigantic geoglyphs, lines, geometric shapes, and staggering depictions of animals and plants have endured for over 2,000 years. The sheer scale of these creations defies easy comprehension. A hummingbird with wings outstretched spans more than 300 feet. A condor measures 440 feet from beak to tail feathers. A spiral-tailed monkey stretches over 360 feet. Yet, for all their immensity, these masterpieces are virtually invisible from the ground. They reveal their true form only when viewed from a significant height, a fact that has fueled centuries of speculation and wonder. What possible purpose could such art serve if its creators could never see it in its completed glory? The message of the Nazca Lines is therefore not just in what they depict, but in the profound act of their creation. The most compelling theories about the lines point to a deep, sacred connection between the Nazca people and the cosmos. One leading idea is that these giant figures were not meant for human eyes at all, but were instead messages directed toward the gods in the sky. In this interpretation, the geoglyphs served as a kind of ritual landscape, a vast temple without walls where ceremonies were performed to appease deities, perhaps to plead for life-giving rain. The act of creating the lines itself may have been a form of worship, a communal effort that demonstrated devotion through immense physical labor. By carefully removing the dark, sun-baked top layer of pebbles to expose the lighter-colored sand beneath, the Nazca people were drawing on the desert floor with light and shadow, creating designs that would have been visible to their gods looking down from the heavens. The straight lines, some running perfectly straight for miles across rugged terrain, might have been sacred pathways for ceremonial processions, while the animal figures could have represented totemic spirits or constellations. This leads to a second, equally fascinating possibility, that the Nazca Lines functioned as a sophisticated astronomical calendar, Researchers like Maria Reich, who dedicated her life to studying the geoglyphs, noted that many of the long lines align with the rising and setting points of the sun, moon, and significant stars during solstices and equinoxes. In an agricultural society living in one of the driest places on Earth, tracking the seasons with precision was a matter of survival. The giant spider figure, for instance, is believed to be a representation of the Orion constellation, a key marker in the night sky for timing planting and harvesting. The message hidden in these alignments would be one of practical necessity blended with celestial reverence. The Nazca people may have been mapping the heavens on the ground, turning their entire territory into a colossal observatory that connected their daily lives to the rhythmic cycles of the universe. A more recent and pragmatic theory suggests the lines are also a map of a different kind, a guide to the most precious resource in the desert water. Geological surveys have shown that many of the long lines and trapezoidal shapes point directly toward underground water sources or lead to areas where aquifers surface. The animal figures themselves might symbolize specific water deities or mark the locations of wells. The hummingbird, a creature known for its dependence on nectar, could be a symbolic pointer to a life-sustaining spring. This theory presents the Nazca Lines not solely as a spiritual monument, but as a complex hydrographic map, a survival tool encoded into the landscape. The true hidden message would then be a testament to human adaptation, showing how the Nazca people read the subtle signs of their harsh environment and recorded that knowledge on a scale that would endure for millennia. Ultimately, the greatest secret of the Nazca Lines may be that they served all these purposes simultaneously. They were likely a multi-layered text written upon the desert, combining religion, astronomy, and resource management into a single, cohesive worldview. The creation of such figures required an extraordinary feat of engineering and planning without the benefit of aerial surveillance. This implies the Nazca possessed a remarkable understanding of geometry and scale, able to project massive designs from small-scale models onto the vast landscape. The message they left behind is one of a society deeply integrated with its environment, seeing no separation between the spiritual and the practical, the celestial and the terrestrial. They transformed their world into a sacred text, and though we may never fully understand every sentence, the sheer ambition of their communication echoes across the centuries. After contemplating messages meant for the gods and landscapes that function as calendars, we arrive at a moment in history when the hidden voices of an entire civilization were finally given a key. This story shifts from the mystery of the undeciphered to the triumph of understanding, centered on perhaps the most famous archaeological discovery of all time, the Rosetta Stone. Unlike the artifacts we have explored so far, the stone's power lies not in a single cryptic message, but in its role as a master key, designed by chance to unlock a language lost for nearly 2,000 years. Its discovery was not the result of a careful archaeological dig, but a byproduct of war. In July of 1799, French soldiers under Napoleon Bonaparte were reinforcing a fort near the Egyptian town of Rosetta, which they called Rashid. As they dismantled an ancient wall, a lieutenant named Pierre-François Bouchard noticed a large, dark slab of granodiorite bearing 3 distinct bands of inscription. He recognized its potential significance immediately. This was not just another carved stone, it was a linguistic puzzle of unprecedented importance, a decree issued by a council of priests in the year 196 before the Common Era, honoring the pharaoh Ptolemy V. The true genius of its design, however, was that it proclaimed this same decree in 3 different scripts: ancient Greek at the bottom, Demotic script in the middle, and majestic hieroglyphs at the top. For centuries before this discovery, hieroglyphs had been the ultimate locked door. European scholars who encountered them on obelisks and tomb walls saw only beautiful, impenetrable pictures. They were mistakenly believed to be purely symbolic, with each image representing a complex idea or religious concept. a form of sacred art rather than a practical writing system. The Demotic script, a flowing, cursive form of Egyptian used for everyday purposes, was equally mysterious. The Rosetta Stone changed everything by providing a known point of entry, ancient Greek. Scholars could read the Greek section with ease, understanding the decree's content about tax relief and temple honors. The challenge then became monumental, to use this known text as a cipher to crack the codes of the two unknown scripts. It was a race against time and across international borders, as the stone ended up in British possession after Napoleon's defeat and was transported to the British Museum where it remains today. The greatest minds in Europe tackled the puzzle, but it was a Frenchman, Jean-François Champollion, who would ultimately make the final, breathtaking breakthrough. Champollion's success was built on a critical insight that overturned centuries of assumption. He, like others, initially focused on the cartouches, the oval rings that enclosed certain groups of hieroglyphs. These were thought to set off the names of royalty. Using the Greek text, he identified the cartouche for Ptolemy. By comparing the hieroglyphs in this cartouche to the sounds in the Greek name, Ptolmaios, he made a revolutionary deduction. Hieroglyphs were not just symbols, they could also represent sounds. He confirmed this with another cartouche for the Queen Cleopatra, which had been found on an obelisk. The hieroglyphs within her cartouche corresponded phonetically to the sounds of her name. This was the pivotal key turning in the lock. Champollion realized that Egyptian hieroglyphs were a complex, functioning system that mixed phonetic characters, like an alphabet, with logographic ones, which represent whole words or concepts. He had not just translated a word, he had deciphered the fundamental principle of a lost language. The impact of this decipherment cannot be overstated. It was as if a great silence had been broken. Overnight, the walls of temples and tombs, the inscriptions on statues, and the texts on countless papyrus scrolls were transformed from mute artwork into a vast, readable library. The hidden messages of the pharaohs were no longer hidden. We could now read the boasts of Ramses the Great about his military victories, the religious incantations meant to guide souls to the afterlife from the pyramid texts, and the intimate love poetry written by ordinary people. The stone itself, a fairly mundane administrative document, became the gateway to understanding an entire civilization's history, beliefs, and daily life. It revealed the Egyptians as they saw themselves, a people concerned with law, faith, and legacy. The Rosetta Stone's message is therefore a meta-message. It is about the profound human need for communication to endure beyond a single lifetime, and the equally powerful human drive to recover those lost voices. It stands as a permanent testament to the idea that no message is truly lost forever, if only we can find the right key. From the monumental breakthrough of the Rosetta Stone, which gave voice to an entire civilization, we now turn to a discovery that offered a different kind of key, not to a language, but to a pivotal moment in religious history. In the stark, sun-scorched hills overlooking the Dead Sea, a moment of youthful curiosity would uncover what many consider the greatest archaeological find of the 20th century. The story of the Dead Sea Scrolls begins in 1947, when a young Bedouin shepherd searching for a lost goat tossed a stone into a small opening in the limestone cliffs near Qumran. Instead of hearing the skittering of an animal, he heard the distinct sound of shattering pottery. Venturing inside, he and his cousin discovered a series of tall, cylindrical clay jars. Inside, protected by the dry desert air for 2 millennia, were not treasures of gold but something far more precious, ancient leather and papyrus scrolls blackened with age. This initial discovery would spark a decade of excavations that ultimately yielded nearly 1,000 manuscripts from 11 different caves. These were not just any old texts, they were the library of a community, hidden away in a time of crisis, and their hidden messages would profoundly reshape our understanding of the world from which both modern Judaism and Christianity emerged. The most immediate and breathtaking revelation was the sheer age of the texts. Through carbon dating and paleographic analysis of the script, scholars determined that the scrolls were copied between the 3rd century before the Common Era and the 1st century of the Common Era. This meant that among these fragments were the oldest surviving copies of the Hebrew Bible by a margin of nearly 1,000 years. Before this discovery, the oldest complete Hebrew texts were from the Middle Ages. The Dead Sea Scrolls allowed scholars to peer back through that immense gulf of time and compare these ancient versions with the later, standardized Masoretic text that forms the basis of the modern Old Testament. What they found was not a story of dramatic alteration, but one of remarkable stability. The core texts of books like Isaiah were virtually identical, a testament to the incredible care and accuracy of generations of Jewish scribes. Yet, within that overall consistency, the scrolls also preserved fascinating textual variations, different spellings, minor word changes, and even some additional passages. These subtle differences are hidden messages in their own right, offering a glimpse into a time when the biblical canon was still somewhat fluid, showing the living, breathing process of how these sacred texts were transmitted and refined over centuries. But the scrolls contained far more than just biblical books. The second layer of their hidden message was the window they provided into the life and beliefs of a specific and quite radical Jewish sect. Most scholars believe the community responsible for writing and preserving this library was the Essenes, a group described by ancient historians like Josephus as ascetic, celibate, and living in communal purity. The scrolls themselves confirm and dramatically enrich this picture. One of the most important non-biblical texts found is the Community Rule, a kind of constitution that outlines the strict laws and hierarchical structure of the sect. It describes a dualistic worldview, a belief that they were the sons of light, living in a cosmic struggle against the sons of darkness. To prepare for this imminent final battle, they withdrew into the desert, dedicating themselves to ritual baths, strict observance of Jewish law as they interpreted it, and the shared ownership of property. These rules reveal a community that saw itself as the true, purified Israel, waiting for the end of days. The hidden message here is one of intense religious ferment, showing that Judaism in the Second Temple period was not a monolith, but a vibrant tapestry of competing interpretations and expectations. This leads to the third and perhaps most revolutionary aspect of the scrolls, the previously unknown apocalyptic and legal writings that had been lost to history. Texts like the War Scroll describe in elaborate, almost cinematic detail the final 40-year war between the forces of light and darkness, complete with military tactics and divine intervention. The Temple Scroll presents an elaborate vision for a perfect future temple, a blueprint for a new Jerusalem that would be established after God's victory. These works show a community deeply engaged with prophetic ideas, interpreting the political turmoil of their own time, the oppressive rule of the Roman Empire, and their conflict with the corrupt priestly establishment in Jerusalem through an apocalyptic lens. The hidden messages in these texts illuminate the diverse spiritual landscape that existed just before the rise of Christianity. Many of the concepts found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, such as a messianic figure, a final judgment, and a new covenant, resonate strongly with ideas that would later appear in the New Testament. This does not suggest a direct link, but rather shows that these ideas were in the air, part of a common pool of Jewish thought in the 1st century. Therefore, the ultimate secret of the Dead Sea Scrolls is not found in a single, decoded prophecy, but in the complex portrait they paint of a world at a religious crossroads. They reveal a time of intense expectation, of communities grappling with foreign domination and spiritual uncertainty by turning to scripture, law, and apocalyptic hope. By carefully hiding their library in clay jars within desert caves, the Essenes ensured that their voice would not be silenced by the Roman legions who eventually destroyed their settlement. They entrusted their most precious possessions to the dry desert air, a silent witness that would speak across 2 millennia. The message they left behind is a humbling one for history. that our understanding of the past is always provisional, and that a single discovery can illuminate the shadows, revealing the rich, complicated, and very human struggles that shape the world we know today. While the Dead Sea Scrolls gave us a library from a community that chose isolation, our next hidden message comes from one of the most isolated human communities to have ever existed: Easter Island, or Rapa Nui. Here, the mystery is not found in jars within caves, but carved into weathered wooden tablets, and its silence is even more profound. Known as Rongo Rongo, this system of glyphs is a series of intricate, fluid characters, stylized humans, animals, plants, and geometric shapes that seem to tell a story as they cascade across the tablets in a unique pattern called reverse Boustrafedon. This means the text is read from left to right on one line, but then you physically turn the tablet upside down to read the next line, also from left to right. It's a complex and deliberate way to record information, and it is the last great undeciphered script of the Pacific. The hidden message of Rongo Rongo is a desperate plea from a culture that faced unimaginable collapse, a story we can only guess at by reading the tragic context of the island itself. The history of how these tablets were discovered adds a cruel layer to their mystery. European explorers first took note of them in the 1860s, after the island's society had already been decimated by slave raids, disease, and ecological devastation. When missionaries arrived, they found a handful of elderly islanders who could apparently recite the text from memory, but none of them could truly read the glyphs in a way that satisfied linguistic analysis. Tragically, the last of these potential interpreters died without passing on the key, and the remaining tablets were collected, many ending up in museums across the world. This creates the central, agonizing question: does Rongo Rongo represent a true writing system where the glyphs encode specific words and grammar, or is it a form of proto-writing, a sophisticated mnemonic device meant to jog the memory of someone who already knew the stories by heart? If it is the former, then the Rapa Nui people independently invented writing, a monumental intellectual achievement. If it's the latter, it's still a powerful system for preserving cultural knowledge, but one that dies with its last reciter. This ambiguity leads to several compelling theories about what stories these tablets hold. One prominent idea is that they are cosmogonic texts, recording the Rapa Nui people's own creation myths and the epic voyages of their ancestors who crossed thousands of miles of open ocean to settle the island. The glyphs of fish, birds, and canoe-like shapes could be a literal chronicle of this incredible journey. Another theory suggests they are genealogical records, carving the lineage of chiefs and important families into wood to establish authority and history. A more poignant and plausible theory, given the island's fate, is that the tablets contain a warning. They might tell the story of the island's ecological collapse, a chronicle of how a thriving society felled the last of the great palm forests that were critical for building fishing canoes, leading to soil erosion, starvation, and societal conflict. The hidden message, in this case, would be a tragic elegy, a self-aware record of a people watching their world shrink around them. Yet, the very survival of the tablets might be the most powerful hidden message of all. The fact that they are made of wood is significant. Easter Island was, by the time of European contact, largely treeless. The creation of these tablets, therefore, likely dates back to a time when timber was still available, making them incredibly valuable artifacts. Their preservation suggests the Rapa Nui people understood their immense importance, hiding them or passing them down as sacred heirlooms even as their society crumbled. They represent a final, stubborn act of cultural preservation. The Rongo Rongo script is more than an unsolved puzzle. It is the ghost of a culture's voice. It reminds us that knowledge is fragile and that the most important messages can be lost not through malice, but simply through the relentless passage of time and tragedy. It stands as a silent witness to human resilience and ultimately to the profound silence that can follow when a world ends. Beneath the bustling, modern streets of Rome lies a hidden city of the dead, a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers known as the catacombs. But these were not just burial places. For the early Christians of the Roman Empire, they became a secret canvas for a faith that had to remain invisible to the outside world. In an era when professing Christianity could mean arrest, torture, or execution, believers could not openly build churches or create grand religious art. Instead, they went underground, both literally and figuratively, developing a coded visual language to express their deepest beliefs and to signal safety to one another. The walls of these subterranean passages, where they laid their loved ones to rest, are covered with frescoes and carvings that, to a Roman soldier or official, would have appeared as simple, even charming, decorative motifs. But to an initiated Christian, these images were a powerful and profound declaration of hope, community, and resistance. The hidden message was not just in the symbols themselves, but in the very act of creating them in a place of darkness and death, transforming it into a sanctuary of light and eternal life. One of the most widespread and significant of these covert symbols was the fish, or ichthys in Greek. At first glance, a simple drawing of a fish might seem like a random doodle, perhaps a wish for a good meal. But for the early Christians, it was a multi-layered acronym of immense theological weight. The Greek word for fish, iodochai theta upsilon sigma, served as a cipher for the core of their faith. Each letter stood for a title of Jesus: Isus Christos Thea, Uios Sota, Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. To scratch a fish on a wall near a doorway was a discreet way to mark a safe house or a meeting place. During a chance encounter, one believer might draw a single arc of the fish in the dirt with their foot. If the other person completed the symbol with the second arc, it was a silent, powerful confirmation of shared belief. This simple image, therefore, contained the entire Christian confession, a declaration of who Jesus was and a marker of a secret community, all hidden in plain sight. Alongside the fish, another common symbol was the anchor. In the practical world of the Mediterranean, the anchor was a universal sign of safety and security, an object that kept a ship from being lost in a storm. Christians adopted this familiar image and infused it with a deeper spiritual meaning. For them, the anchor became a disguised cross, its horizontal bar resting below the ring representing the crossbeam of the crucifixion. More than that, it symbolized the hope of salvation and the steadfastness of their faith in the face of violent persecution. The anchor's message was one of stability amidst turmoil, a promise that their souls were secured not by a physical object but by their faith in Christ. It is a poignant metaphor, especially when found carved beside a tomb, a declaration that death was not the end but merely a safe harbor after the storms of life. Perhaps the most tender and evocative image found in the catacombs is that of the Good Shepherd. These frescoes depict a youthful, beardless man, often dressed in a simple tunic, carrying a sheep across his shoulders. To a Roman viewer, this would have looked like a typical pastoral scene, a depiction of a kind shepherd, a common and unthreatening figure in classical art. But for Christians, this image was packed with meaning straight from their scriptures. It represented Jesus as the shepherd who lays down his life for his sheep, the compassionate guide who seeks out the lost lamb and carries it safely home. In the context of the catacombs, a place of mourning, the image offered immense comfort. It assured grieving families that their deceased loved one was not lost, but was being carried gently by Christ into eternal pastures. This symbol emphasized the personal, caring nature of their God, a stark contrast to the impersonal and often demanding gods of the Roman state religion. These symbols were rarely used in isolation. Walking through the catacombs today, one sees them combined with other images like the dove, representing the soul and peace, or the oronte, a figure with arms raised in prayer, symbolizing the faithful soul in communion with God. Together, this visual language created a narrative of salvation, hope, and resurrection on the very walls that surrounded the dead. The catacombs were not just hiding places, they were active places of worship, especially on the anniversaries of a martyr's death. In these candlelit chambers surrounded by the symbols of their faith, the Christian community would celebrate the Eucharist, reinforcing their bonds and their courage. The hidden messages in the Roman catacombs are therefore a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. They show how a persecuted minority used creativity and subtlety to preserve their identity, communicate with each other, and express a hope so powerful that it could flourish even in the darkest corners of the earth. From the secret symbols of a persecuted faith, we journey thousands of years further back in time to a place that fundamentally rewrites the story of human civilization itself. Located on a windswept hilltop in southeastern Turkey, Göbekli Tepe is an archaeological site so revolutionary that it forces us to question the very sequence of events we thought led to modern society. For centuries, the prevailing narrative was clear. First, humans learned to farm, creating a stable, surplus food supply. This agricultural revolution then allowed for the growth of settled villages, which eventually evolved into complex cities. Only then, with this newfound stability and specialization, did humans have the time, resources, and social organization to build monumental structures for religious or communal purposes. Göbekli Tepe shatters that timeline into a million pieces. Dating back an astonishing 11,500 years, this complex of stone circles and massive T-shaped pillars predates Stonehenge by 6 millennia and the Great Pyramids of Giza by more than 7,000 years. It was built not by settled farmers but by communities of hunter-gatherers. The hidden message of Göbekli Tepe is not just in the symbols carved into its stones, but in its sheer, defiant existence, a monumental temple constructed before the invention of agriculture, pottery, or even the wheel. The most striking features of the site are these enormous T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing over 10 tons. They are arranged in concentric circles, with 2 particularly large pillars positioned at the center of each ring. The scale of the work is staggering, requiring a level of planning, labor, and coordination that archaeologists never attributed to nomadic peoples. Quarrying these monoliths, transporting them from nearby pits, and erecting them would have required the concerted effort of hundreds of individuals, likely from different bands or clans that traveled to this specific location. This suggests a hidden social message that hunter-gatherer societies were capable of far more complex and collaborative organization than we ever imagined. They were not simply living hand-to-mouth, focused solely on survival. They possessed a shared worldview and a collective purpose powerful enough to motivate them to undertake a project that would have consumed vast amounts of time and energy. Göbekli Tepe implies that organized religion, the desire to build something grand for a concept greater than oneself, may have been the catalyst that first brought humans together in large numbers, potentially even prompting the experiments with cultivating grains that would later lead to agriculture. The temple, in this light, may have come before the farm, but the true hidden messages are etched into the very skin of these pillars. The flat surfaces of the T-shaped stones are covered in a rich tapestry of intricate carvings. These are not abstract patterns, they are vivid, finely executed reliefs of animals. We see foxes, snakes, wild boars, cranes, and fearsome creatures like scorpions and lions. What is immediately fascinating is the near-total absence of human forms. The pillars themselves, with their carved arms and loincloths, are arguably stylized human figures, perhaps ancestors or powerful supernatural beings. But the dominant visual language is that of the animal world. These are not peaceful, pastoral scenes. The animals are often depicted in dynamic, aggressive poses, their features sharp and pronounced. This has led to a primary theory that these carvings represent a complex spiritual belief system, a form of totemism. Each animal could symbolize a different clan that gathered at Göbekli Tepe for communal rituals. The depictions would then serve as symbolic representations of these groups, their power animals, or the protective spirits they believed watched over them. The gathering of these symbols in one place would signify a sacred truce or a grand coming together of different peoples, a message of unity and shared worship carved in stone for eternity. Another compelling idea is that these animals are more than just symbols. They are components of a celestial map. Some researchers have proposed that the specific arrangement of the pillars and the animals carved upon them corresponds to constellations in the night sky as they would have appeared 11,000 years ago. In this interpretation, Göbekli Tepe was not just a temple but a sophisticated observatory. The vultures, which feature prominently, might represent a constellation we now know as Cygnus or Lyra. The scorpion could easily be Scorpio. This theory suggests that the builders were keenly aware of the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that changes our view of the stars over millennia. The hidden message encoded in the stones would then be a record of their understanding of the cosmos, a way to mark time and significant astronomical events that were central to their mythology and ritual calendar. This would assign a level of astronomical knowledge to these ancient people that is truly breathtaking. A third, more pragmatic theory views the carvings as narrative warnings or lessons. The animals depicted are largely dangerous predators or creatures associated with death, like vultures. Perhaps the reliefs illustrate creation myths, stories of legendary hunts, or cautionary tales about the perils of the natural world. They could be a form of preserved oral tradition, a way to pass down essential knowledge about which animals were threats, which were sacred, and how to interact with the spirit world they believed inhabited every rock and creature. The hidden message is one of education and cultural memory, ensuring that critical survival information and beliefs were transmitted accurately from one generation to the next through a permanent, stone-carved library. Ultimately, the most profound secret of Göbekli Tepe may be a combination of all these ideas. The site was likely a multifunctional center for ritual, social gathering, astronomical observation, and the reinforcement of a shared identity. After serving its purpose for over 1,000 years, the entire complex was deliberately and carefully buried around 10,000 years ago, filled in with earth and stone. This was not an act of destruction or abandonment, but one of preservation, a final, respectful act that protected the sacred site for millennia until its rediscovery. This deliberate burial is itself a powerful, silent message. It tells us that the people of Göbekli Tepe held this place in such reverence that they chose to hide it from the world, ensuring its secrets would remain intact, waiting for a future age to uncover its staggering truth, that the human impulse to create, to believe, and to seek meaning in the universe is far older and far more profound than we ever dreamed. From the ancient hunter-gatherer temple of Göbekli Tepe, we journey forward several thousand years to the Bronze Age and the magnificent island of Crete, where an entire palace was designed to be a puzzle in stone. The Palace of Knossos stands as the ceremonial and political heart of the Minoan civilization, a culture renowned for its vibrant art, maritime power, and sophisticated society. Yet, beyond its famous frescoes of leaping dolphins and graceful bull leapers, lies a hidden message woven into the very fabric of its architecture. The sprawling complex, with its multi-level buildings, interconnected corridors, and sudden dead ends, is so intricate that it gave birth to one of the most enduring myths of the ancient world, the labyrinth. This was the fabled home of the Minotaur, the half-man, half-bull monster to whom Athenian youths were said to be sacrificed. While the Minotaur is a creature of legend, the labyrinth was very real, and its design was a deliberate masterpiece of psychological and political engineering. Walking through the reconstructed ruins today, one can still feel a sense of disorientation. Corridors twist and turn unexpectedly. Staircases lead to small, secluded rooms, and what appears to be a main thoroughfare might suddenly terminate at a blank wall. For a visitor in the palace's heyday around 1900 before the Common Era, this experience would have been profoundly intentional. The hidden message of this architectural maze was one of absolute power and control. Imagine a foreign ambassador or a tribute-bearing delegate arriving at the court of the Minoan king, often referred to in legend as Minos. they would not be led on a straight, dignified path to the throne room. Instead, they would be guided through a confusing succession of courtyards, colonnades, and narrow passages. This journey was designed to impress, intimidate, and disorient. The constant twists and turns would diminish the visitor's sense of direction and self-assurance, making the palace itself feel alive and unknowable. By the time they finally reached the presence of the ruler seated in the central courtyard, the visitor's perception of Minoan power would be overwhelming. The message was clear: those who inhabit this complex hold knowledge you cannot fathom. Their authority is as deep and intricate as the structure around you. This disorienting layout also served a deeply practical purpose: security. The palace was not a fortified castle with high, defensive walls. Its security lay in its complexity. An invading force, or even an unwanted intruder, would find themselves lost in a honeycomb of identical-looking corridors. Defenders would know every shortcut and hidden passage, allowing them to appear, strike, and disappear with terrifying efficiency. The design essentially weaponized the architecture, turning the palace into a defensive trap for anyone not privy to its secrets. This dual-function, psychological intimidation and physical security, shows a remarkable understanding of how to wield power through design. The labyrinth was not a flaw, it was the palace's greatest strategic feature, but the architectural message of Knossos extends beyond raw power into the realm of the sacred. The central courtyard is the undeniable heart of the entire complex, a large, open space around which all other elements seem to radiate. This was not merely an aesthetic choice. Scholars believe this courtyard was the stage for major public rituals, most notably the bull-leaping ceremonies depicted so vividly in Minoan art. In these events, athletes, both male and female, would perform breathtaking acrobatics over the backs of charging bulls. The labyrinthine journey to this central space would have heightened the anticipation and sacredness of the ritual for spectators. After navigating the confusing passages, emerging into the bright, open courtyard to witness a dramatic and dangerous performance would have been a transformative experience. The layout itself orchestrated a spiritual journey from the confusion and darkness of the mundane world through the twisting path of initiation and finally into the brilliant life and death drama at the cosmic center. The palace, therefore, was a microcosm of the Minoan world order, where political authority and religious belief were seamlessly intertwined, and where the ultimate hidden message was that to know the path through the labyrinth was to hold the key to both earthly power and divine favor. Moving from the sacred labyrinths of ancient Crete, we arrive at a more recent, yet equally cunning, use of narrative art to shape perception. Housed in a dedicated museum in Normandy, France, the Bayeux Tapestry is a stunning piece of historical storytelling. This embroidered cloth, stretching an incredible 70 meters in length, is often celebrated as a near-contemporary visual chronicle of the Norman conquest of England in 1066. It depicts the events leading up to the Battle of Hastings with the vivid energy of a medieval epic, complete with armies, ships, and political intrigue. But to view it as a simple, objective historical record is to miss its true and far more fascinating purpose. The tapestry is, in reality, a masterclass in political propaganda, a sophisticated visual argument commissioned by the victors to legitimize their bloody takeover. Its hidden message is not woven subtly into the background. It is the very thread from which the entire narrative is constructed, designed to vilify the Anglo-Saxon King Harold Godwinson and sanctify the cause of William, Duke of Normandy. The tapestry's origin story is key to understanding its bias. It was almost certainly commissioned by Odo, the Bishop of Bayeux, who also happened to be William the Conqueror's half-brother and a key participant in the invasion. Odo had a vested interest in justifying the conquest, both to consolidate Norman rule over a hostile English population and to secure his own power and vast landholdings in the new regime. The tapestry was likely designed to be displayed in his newly built cathedral, a very public venue where it could be read by a largely illiterate populace. It functioned as a form of mass media, a cinematic epic stitched in wool on linen, whose purpose was to present a version of events that served the new ruling class. This context transforms every scene from a mere illustration into a deliberate piece of political persuasion. This persuasive intent becomes glaringly obvious in the tapestry's treatment of Harold Godwinson. The narrative begins not with William's ambitions, but with a pivotal episode from 1064. It shows Harold traveling to Normandy, where he is captured by a local count and then rescued by William. The Norman version, as depicted, claims that during this visit, Harold solemnly swore an oath of allegiance to William, pledging to support the Duke's claim to the English throne upon the death of the reigning king, Edward the Confessor. The tapestry renders this moment with dramatic emphasis. Harold is shown with his hands resting on two reliquaries, sacred containers holding the bones of saints. To a medieval viewer, this act made the oath unbreakable, sworn on the most holy objects imaginable. The very next scene shows Harold returning to England and boldly seizing the crown for himself after Edward's death. The message is clear and damning. Harold is not merely a political rival, he is a perjurer, an oath-breaker who has violated a sacred vow. In the moral universe of the 11th century, this made him a man without honor, and his subsequent death at Hastings could be framed not as a tragic defeat, but as divine punishment for his treachery. In stark contrast, William the Conqueror is portrayed throughout as the epitome of pious, decisive leadership. Before the invasion, we see him consulting with his advisors in a calm, orderly manner, a model of reasoned governance. The construction of the invasion fleet is depicted as a hive of efficient, organized activity, showcasing Norman ingenuity and determination. Most importantly, the tapestry goes to great lengths to show that William had the blessing of the church. There is a powerful scene where a clerk is shown blessing the feast before the battle, and a comet, later identified as Halley's Comet, which appeared in 1066, is shown in the English section. The Anglo-Saxons look on in terror, interpreting it as a bad omen, while William's men see it as a divine sign favoring their cause. This manipulation of symbolism reinforces the core argument: God is on the side of the Normans. William's invasion is not an act of greedy aggression. It is a holy crusade to punish a usurper and restore rightful order. The climax of this narrative manipulation occurs at the death of Harold. The traditional account, supported by some sources, is that Harold was struck in the eye by an arrow. The tapestry appears to show this with a figure labeled Harold grasping at a shaft near his face. But right next to this image is another figure, also labeled Harold, being brutally hacked down by a Norman knight on horseback. This dual depiction is unlikely to be a simple mistake. It serves a powerful rhetorical purpose. By showing Harold dying twice, the tapestry emphasizes the totality of his defeat and the righteousness of his downfall. He is not just killed, he is obliterated, paying the ultimate price for his broken oath. The final scenes, which are now missing but were described in early accounts, showed William's coronation, the triumphant culmination of a story that had been carefully crafted from the very first stitch. The Bayeux Tapestry, therefore, is far more than a historical document. It is a weapon of narrative warfare, a brilliant piece of visual rhetoric that successfully framed a brutal conquest as a morally justified act of God. It reminds us that history is not just written by the victors, sometimes it is beautifully, indelibly embroidered by them. While the Bayeux Tapestry used visual narrative as a tool for political power, our next hidden message system relies on the power of individual symbols carved into bone, wood, and stone. Moving from the sunlit halls of Normandy to the misty forests of ancient Germania, we encounter the runes. These angular, stark characters, known collectively as the Futhark after their first 6 letters, are far more than a simple alphabet. For the Germanic tribes of northern Europe, from the Romans' first encounters with them through the Viking Age, Each rune was a vessel of profound meaning, a repository of cosmic power, and a direct link to the divine. The hidden message of the runes is that writing itself was a sacred, magical act, where the very shapes of the letters were believed to channel forces that could shape reality. To understand this, we must first look at the runes not as we see letters today, but as the ancients saw them. The Elder Futhark, the oldest form of the runic alphabet dating back to around the 2nd century of the Common Era, consists of 24 characters. Each one has a name that is also a word representing a core concept from the natural and spiritual world. For instance, the first rune, Fehu, is named for cattle or wealth, the mobile property that defined prosperity. The rune Yoraz is named for the wild, formidable aurochs bull, symbolizing untamed strength and vital force. Ansas is the god, specifically Odin, representing divine inspiration and communication. So, to write a word was not just to spell it out phonetically, it was to string together a sequence of powerful concepts, layering meaning upon meaning. Inscribing the rune for a journey, Raidho, alongside the rune for protection, Algiz, was not merely writing safe travels. It was an active invocation, a ritual that called upon the essence of the path and the power of the elk's defensive antlers to manifest that reality for the traveler. This belief in the inherent power of the symbols is brilliantly illustrated by some of the most fascinating runic artifacts ever found, the bracteates and amulets. The Lindholm amulet, a small bone plaque discovered in Denmark and dated to the 4th century, is a perfect example. It bears one of the most debated and magical inscriptions in the runic corpus. The inscription is a seemingly repetitive sequence. A clear, potent word, orja, meaning luck or good fortune, is combined with a series of runes written in a specific, powerful order. This is not a sentence, it is an incantation. The prevailing theory is that the amulet was a talisman, and the act of carving these specific runes in this specific pattern was a spell designed to bind luck to its wearer. The hidden message was not meant to be read aloud in a marketplace. It was meant to be worn against the skin, its silent, eternal hum of magical energy providing constant protection. This transforms the artifact from a piece of jewelry into a battery of intended supernatural power. This magical application had a darker side as well, seen in the runestones that dot the Scandinavian landscape. While many of these large, raised stones were erected as proud memorials to the dead, some contain chilling hidden messages meant not to honor but to harm. There are runic inscriptions that are explicitly curses, designed to unleash misery upon an enemy or to guard a grave from desecration with terrifying threats. The belief was that carving the runes for pain, loss, or calamity would activate those very energies against the intended target. The rune Theorisaz, associated with the thorn and the destructive giants, could be deployed as a weapon. The simple act of forming its sharp, aggressive shape was thought to project violence. This gives a completely different dimension to a runestone standing silently in a field. It is not a passive monument. For those who knew the power of the runes, it was an active guardian, a landmine of spiritual consequence. The ultimate source of this power, according to myth, was a god who paid a terrible price for knowledge. The Norse god Odin, in the Old Norse poem Havamal, describes his quest to obtain the runes. He tells how he hung for 9 nights on the world tree, Yggdrasil, pierced by his own spear, sacrificing himself to himself. He endured this agony without food or water, peering downward into the deep well of wisdom. At the climax of his ordeal, he grasped the runes, screaming them up as he took them. This myth is fundamental to understanding the runic worldview. Knowledge, especially the knowledge of writing, was not given freely. It was won through extreme sacrifice and suffering, making it a force not to be used lightly. Odin's self-sacrifice imbued the runes with a sacredness that separated them from mundane communication. They were a gift from the gods, paid for in pain, and their use was a serious matter that connected the carver directly to the divine. The hidden message in every runic inscription, therefore, is an echo of that primal scream of discovery, a reminder that language can be a conduit for forces far greater than ourselves, and that some messages are carved not just into stone, but into the fabric of fate itself. And now we shift from the symbolic power of runes to a message of imperial authority written not in letters, but in the faces of an army of clay. In 1974, farmers digging a well in China's Shaanxi province struck upon one of the most astonishing archaeological discoveries of all time, the Terracotta Army. This vast, silent legion was crafted to guard the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the formidable first emperor who unified China in the 3rd century before the Common Era. While the sheer scale of the discovery is staggering, thousands of life-sized soldiers, horses, and chariots arranged in battle formation, the true hidden message is not in their numbers but in their breathtaking individuality. From a distance, they appear as a uniform host, but up close, each warrior is a unique person. No two faces are exactly alike. For decades, this led to a romantic belief that each statue was a portrait of a real soldier in the emperor's army, immortalized in clay to serve him for eternity. But the reality, revealed by modern archaeological analysis, is in many ways even more profound. The secret to this incredible diversity lies in a sophisticated, almost industrialized production process. Researchers have determined that the craftsmen did not sculpt each warrior from a single lump of clay. Instead, they employed an assembly line technique that was centuries ahead of its time. The bodies were created from a limited set of modular parts. Torsos, legs, arms, and heads were all made from standardized molds. This allowed for the efficient production of an army numbering in the thousands. But here is where the magic happened. After these basic components were assembled, the artisans turned to the faces. They used the molded heads as a blank canvas, and with wet clay, they meticulously added unique features by hand. A slightly different set of eyebrows here, fuller lips there, a distinctive hairstyle or a thoughtful wrinkle on the forehead. Each tiny modification transformed a standardized component into a distinct human being. This combination of mass production and individualized artistry is the core of the hidden message. So, what does this army of unique faces truly say? It is a monumental declaration of the emperor's absolute power, but of a very specific kind. Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with immortality and his legacy in the afterlife. By creating an army where every soldier is an individual, he was making a statement that transcended mere wealth. He was demonstrating a command over the most precious resource of all, human creativity and skill on an unimaginable scale. He could not only summon thousands of men to fight for him in life, but he could also command an entire civilization's worth of artisans, entire workshops dedicated for years, perhaps decades, to this single project, to create a personalized eternal guard. The message is that the emperor's authority was so total that it could extend beyond death, marshalling limitless and personalized resources to maintain his power in the next world. The army is not just a collection of statues, it is a metaphor for the emperor's ability to organize and control every facet of his empire, down to the most minute detail. Furthermore, the variety of faces may reflect the very diversity of the empire Qin Shi Huang had forged through conquest. The terracotta soldiers include figures with features associated with different ethnic groups from across the vast expanse of a newly unified China. In this light, the army becomes a symbol of imperial cohesion. It says that all peoples from all regions now serve the one true emperor, their unique identities incorporated into the greater whole of his domain, even in death. The hidden message, therefore, is one of both overwhelming power and intricate control. It tells us that Qin Shi Huang's vision for his afterlife was not one of solitary glory, but of a perfectly ordered kingdom, defended by an army as varied and multifaceted as the living empire he ruled. Each soldier a silent, eternal testament to the will of the man who declared himself the first emperor of all China. From the silent, individualized army of a Chinese emperor, we journey across the world to the jungles of Mesoamerica, where an entire civilization encoded its most profound beliefs about existence into a system of breathtaking complexity. The ancient Maya did not leave behind terracotta legions, but they did erect towering stone monuments known as stelae, which stand as enduring libraries of their knowledge. Carved onto the surfaces of these stelae and painted within their sacred books was a calendrical system of such sophistication that it rivals our own modern methods for tracking time. At the heart of this system lies a hidden message far deeper than mere dates. It is a complete philosophical worldview, a declaration that time itself is not a straight line marching from past to future, but a great turning wheel of cosmic cycles. For the Maya, history was not a series of unique, unrepeatable events, but a pattern of recurring ages, each with its own destiny. To grasp this message, we must first understand the layers of the Mayan calendar, which functioned like a set of interlocking gears in a celestial clock. They used a 260-day ritual cycle called the Tzolk'in, which intertwined 20-day names with 13 numbers, and a 365-day solar year known as the Hop. But the most profound of all was the long count calendar, designed to measure vast expanses of time. The long count is a base 20 system, counting the days that have passed since a mythical starting point, a day zero that corresponds to August 11th, 3,114 years before the Common Era in our Gregorian calendar. These days, or kains, were grouped into larger and larger units. 20 kains made a unal month, 18 unals made a ton, a solar year of 360 days, 20 tons made a katon, about 20 years, and 20 kaatons made a bakton, about 394 years. The ability to calculate and inscribe dates thousands of years into the past or future reveals an astronomical and mathematical genius that allowed them to predict planetary movements and eclipses with stunning accuracy. Yet, the hidden message is not in this mathematical prowess alone, but in what the Maya believed these cycles meant. Each unit of time, especially the katon and the bakton, was not an empty container. It was believed to have its own unique personality, its own divine patrons, and its own destined outcomes. A katon was not just a period of 20 years, it was an entity with a specific character, and its end was a moment of tremendous religious and political significance. When a katon was ending, the Maya believed the gods associated with that cycle would withdraw their favor and new gods would take their place. This created a society perpetually preparing for renewal. At the end of a cycle, rulers would undertake elaborate ceremonies to reenact creation and ensure a smooth transition of cosmic power. They would erect new stelae, not merely to record their own deeds, but to anchor the new era in stone, demonstrating their role as the crucial intermediaries between the human world and the divine forces governing time itself. This cyclical view shaped their understanding of history on the grandest scale. The long count calendar itself is composed of larger cycles, and the completion of a major cycle, such as the much-discussed 13th bakton, which ended in December of 2012, was believed to be a time of profound transformation, not an apocalyptic end. The Maya saw these great cycles as analogous to the phases of a day or the seasons of a year. Just as winter is followed by spring, the end of a world age was thought to be followed by a rebirth. This philosophy is powerfully encoded in the rise and fall of their own great cities. Archaeologists have noted that the collapses of major Mayan centers, such as the famous decline of the classic Maya around the 9th century, often coincide with the endings of major calendar cycles. It suggests that the Maya may have interpreted political upheaval, drought, and warfare not as random disasters, but as the inevitable, prophesied characteristics of a closing cycle. The message carved into their monuments is one of cosmic fatalism blended with ritual hope. What has happened before will happen again, and the duty of humanity is to navigate these predetermined turns with piety and ceremony. Ultimately, the Mayan calendar's greatest secret is a challenge to our own linear perception of progress. We often see history as a path of advancement moving ever forward. The Maya saw it as a spiral where the essential patterns of creation, flourishing, decay, and renewal would eternally repeat. Their hidden message is a humbling one, suggesting that civilizations like the seasons have their time. The grandeur of their cities, with their pyramids reaching for the stars, was a conscious attempt to align human activity with these immense, turning wheels of time. They left behind a legacy that tells us time is not a river flowing in one direction, but a sacred dance of cycles within cycles, and that to understand the cosmos, one must first learn to read its rhythm. But after exploring the cyclical philosophy of the Maya, we arrive at perhaps the most iconic and enduring mystery of them all, a structure so immense and perfect that it has captivated humanity for millennia. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the sole surviving wonder of the ancient world, has been studied, measured, and explored for centuries. We have mapped its known passageways, the descending and ascending passages, the subterranean chamber, the Queen's Chamber, and the magnificent King's Chamber with its towering granite sarcophagus. For a long time, it seemed the pyramid had given up all its secrets, but the greatest hidden messages of the pyramid were not in what we could see, but in what remained tantalizingly out of sight. The enduring belief in hidden rooms sealed away for 4,500 years has driven explorers and scientists alike, and recent technological breakthroughs have revealed that these long-held suspicions were not just the stuff of legend. The pyramid, it turns out, still has secrets to tell. The key to unlocking this new chapter of discovery has been muon radiography, a sophisticated technique that feels like something from science fiction. Muons are subatomic particles that are created when cosmic rays from deep space collide with atoms in Earth's upper atmosphere. These particles rain down on us constantly, passing effortlessly through solid matter, much like X-rays can see through soft tissue. However, muons can penetrate hundreds of meters of stone. By placing special detectors inside the pyramid, scientists can measure the density of the structure above them. If a significant number of muons pass through unimpeded, it indicates the presence of a void, an empty space. It is a way of taking an X-ray of a mountain of stone. Between 2015 and 2017, the Scan Pyramids project did exactly this, and the results sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. The data revealed not one, but several anomalies, with the most significant being a massive void situated directly above the Grand Gallery. Dubbed simply the Big Void, this space is estimated to be at least 30 meters long and has a cross-section similar to the Grand Gallery itself, suggesting it is a major architectural feature, not a small construction gap. So what is the hidden message of this unknown space? The immediate, romantic notion is of a hidden treasure chamber, perhaps containing the undisturbed burial goods of the pharaoh Khufu, for whom the pyramid was built. Yet the true message is likely far more profound, speaking to the pyramid's true purpose and the genius of its construction. One of the most compelling theories is that the Big Void is a structural feature, a sophisticated relief chamber designed to redistribute the unimaginable weight of the masonry above the King's Chamber. The Grand Gallery itself is a masterpiece of engineering, with its corbelled walls that shift the immense pressure of the superstructure outward. The Big Void could be an extension of this principle, a carefully calculated empty space that prevents hundreds of thousands of tons of limestone from crushing the chambers below. This would mean the hidden message is one of architectural brilliance, revealing a level of engineering foresight that we are only just beginning to appreciate. The ancient builders were not just stacking stones, they were creating a stable, multi-layered structure designed to stand for eternity. A second, equally fascinating possibility is that these voids are ritual chambers, spaces that were never meant to be entered by the living. In ancient Egyptian cosmology, the pyramid was not just a tomb, it was a machine for resurrection, a vehicle to transport the pharaoh's soul to the realm of the gods. The known chambers each had a specific ritual function. It is entirely plausible that there are other sealed chambers that contain symbolic objects, inscriptions, or architectural features meant to assist the king's spiritual journey. These spaces might be spirit chambers, their contents and arrangements having a purely metaphysical purpose. Their power would have lain in their eternal secrecy, their existence known only to the gods and the priests who designed them. To break into such a chamber would, in their belief system, have defiled its sacred purpose. The hidden message here is about the sacred nature of the pyramid, reminding us that it was first and foremost a religious monument, its hidden anatomy as much a part of its function as its visible form. A third perspective urges caution, suggesting that what we are seeing are simply architectural features we do not yet understand. The interior of the Great Pyramid is not a simple block. It is a complex web of relieving chambers, construction gaps, and internal ramps that may have been used during its building process. Some archaeologists propose that the Big Void could be an internal ramp system that was sealed off as the pyramid was completed from the top down. This theory posits that the builders used a spiral ramp inside the pyramid itself to haul the massive blocks into place, a method that would explain the lack of evidence for an enormous external ramp. If true, the void is not a chamber but a fossilized construction technique, a hidden blueprint of how one of the world's most incredible structures was actually built. The message would then be a historical one, finally revealing the logistical secrets that have baffled engineers for centuries. Ultimately, the existence of these hidden spaces forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge. The Great Pyramid has stood for 4,500 years, a silent witness to the rise and fall of civilizations. We have scoured its passages, yet it continues to guard its deepest secrets. The true hidden message of the Big Void may be a simple, humbling one, that even our most advanced technology can only reveal the shadow of a mystery, not its substance. It reminds us that the ancient world still holds profound surprises, and that the greatest monuments ever built are not yet done speaking to us. The Void is an invitation, a challenge to future generations to develop even more sensitive tools and more creative theories, promising that the final chapter in the story of the Great Pyramid has not yet been written. Yet, for all the sophistication of the Great Pyramid's hidden architecture, some of history's most vital messages were recorded not in stone but in string. High in the Andes, the Inca Empire, the largest in pre-Columbian America, managed a vast and complex territory stretching thousands of miles without what we would recognize as a written word. Their administrative genius, their laws, and their history were all communicated through an extraordinary and beautiful device, the quipu. At first glance, a quipu appears deceptively simple, a main cord from which hang numerous secondary cords of different colors, each tied with a series of intricate knots. For a long time, historians understood these objects primarily as accounting tools, the ancient Andean equivalent of a spreadsheet. The Incas used them with incredible efficiency to record numerical data for imperial censuses, tax records, and inventory of storehouses, managing an economy that connected mountain peaks, coastal deserts, and lush rainforests. The position and type of knot: a figure 8 knot, a long knot with multiple turns, or a single overhand knot represented units, tens, hundreds, and thousands. The color of the cord could signify the subject matter, such as gold, corn, or population. This system was so effective that runners or chasquis could carry quipus across the empire's incredible road network, delivering complex data to the central government in Cusco. But what if the quipu's true message is far deeper than inventory lists? A growing body of research suggests that these knotted cords may constitute a hidden, three-dimensional language capable of encoding full narratives, epic poems, and the entire lost history of the Inca people. The theory arises from a crucial historical puzzle. After the Spanish conquest in the 16th century, chroniclers reported that the Incas used quipus not just for numbers but to record stories and laws. Some Spanish accounts even mention specialized quipu readers known as quipucamayocs, who could read these chords aloud almost as if reciting from a book. Tragically, the Spanish colonizers, viewing the quipus as idolatrous objects or primitive tools, systematically destroyed thousands of them. The art of reading the narrative quipus was largely lost, and with it, the direct voice of the Inca civilization. The surviving quipus, often found in dry coastal graves where they were better preserved, are like pages from a library where we have lost the grammar. We can see the words, the knots and colors, but we can no longer grasp the syntax that turns them into sentences. Modern decipherment efforts are therefore a race against time and a monumental linguistic challenge. Researchers like anthropologist Sabine Heil are pioneering new approaches by studying communities in the Andes that may have preserved fragments of quipu reading knowledge orally. Her work suggests that the information was not stored in the knots alone. The direction of the twist in the cord's ply, whether it was spun clockwise or counter-clockwise, the way cords were attached to the main strand, and even the specific animal fibers used, like alpaca or vicuña wool, could all carry meaning. This transforms the quipu from a simple abacus into a potential binary or even ternary code, a system as complex as a computer programming language where every variable holds a potential phoneme or word. Imagine a history not written on a flat page but woven in 3 dimensions, where the texture of the string and the spatial relationship between knots could tell the story of a battle, the genealogy of a king, or a hymn to the sun god Intai. The hidden message of the quipu, then, is that writing can take forms we scarcely recognize. It challenges our very definition of literature, suggesting that a civilization we have long considered, without writing, may have possessed a literary tradition as rich and complex as any other, but one that was tactile, portable, and woven from the very fibers of their world. The implications of fully deciphering the quipu are staggering. It would be the equivalent of finding a new Rosetta Stone for the Andes, allowing us to hear the Inca version of their own history, unfiltered by their Spanish conquerors. We could finally understand their worldview, their religious beliefs, and the precise details of their legal and social organization from their own perspective. It would give a voice to a people whose monumental architecture, like Machu Picchu, speaks of incredible engineering skill, but whose thoughts and stories have been silent. Each surviving quipu is therefore a locked archive, a knotty puzzle waiting for its key. They represent a poignant reminder that knowledge is fragile and that the loss of a single generation of interpreters can silence an entire civilization. The quest to unlock the quipu is more than an academic exercise. It is an act of historical recovery, an attempt to restring the broken threads of a lost conversation and listen at last to the whispers trapped in the knots. Yet, for all the complex knot languages of the Andes, sometimes a hidden message is conveyed not through abstract codes, but through the terrifying, beautiful face of power itself. In the quiet English countryside of Suffolk, a discovery in the summer of 1939 would do just that, forever changing our understanding of the shadowy period following the Roman withdrawal from Britain. As Europe teetered on the brink of a Second World War, archaeologist Basil Brown unearthed the ghost of a ship. Within a large burial mound, the very wood of the vessel had long since dissolved into the acidic soil, leaving only a stunningly detailed, dark stain in the sand, a perfect negative impression of a 27-meter-long Anglo-Saxon ship, a king's vessel meant to carry him into the afterlife. At its center lay a treasure that would become an icon, the Sutton Hoo helmet. This was not merely a piece of armor, it was a mask of office, a masterpiece of symbolic art whose hidden message was one of raw, calculated authority, designed to project an image of legendary kingship from beyond the grave. The helmet itself is a fearsome and magnificent object reconstructed from hundreds of corroded fragments. Made of iron and covered with decorative panels of tinned bronze, it would have gleamed with a silvery brightness, catching the light like a mirror. Its most striking feature is the full face mask, complete with a nose, mouth, and a formidable mustache, creating an imposing, semi-human visage. gilded eyebrows sweep across the brow, each one terminating in the stylized head of a boar, an animal revered in Anglo-Saxon culture for its ferocity and tenacity in battle. But the helmet's true narrative unfolds across its entire surface. The cap is intricately decorated with scenes of warriors, their figures small yet dynamic, locked in combat. One panel depicts a rider on horseback triumphantly trampling a fallen foe, while another shows two warriors standing face to face, their spears raised. These are not generic soldiers, they are a direct visual language of martial prowess and victory, a permanent record of the kind of heroic deeds that would secure a king's reputation. This is where the hidden message connects to the world of epic poetry. The Sutton Hoo ship burial dates to the early 7th century, a time when the story of the hero Beowulf was being composed and recited in mead halls across the Germanic world. The parallels are uncanny. Beowulf, a Geatish warrior, travels to Denmark to save a kingdom from the monstrous Grendel, and the poem is filled with descriptions of great ship burials and magnificent war gear. Most notably, the poem contains a specific, detailed description of a helmet adorned with boar images, meant to protect the wearer in battle. The Sutton Hoo helmet is that literary description made real. It powerfully suggests that the individual buried at Sutton, who almost certainly King Riedwald of East Anglia, was not just a powerful warlord, but a ruler who consciously modeled himself on the heroic ideals of the Beowulf legend. By being interred with this helmet, he was making a final, indelible claim that his life and reign were the equal of the epic heroes of old. Perhaps the most sophisticated layer of symbolism, however, is the interplay of imagery that connects the king to both the earthly and the divine. The eyebrows are not just boars, they also form the shape of a great flying dragon or serpent, its body extending back over the crest of the helmet. In Anglo-Saxon mythology, the dragon was a symbol of immense power, a guardian of treasure and a creature of both destruction and wisdom. This single, clever design element fuses three potent concepts: the human authority of the mustachioed face, the martial ferocity of the boar, and the overarching, supernatural power of the dragon. The message is that the king embodies all these qualities at once. He is the protector of his people, the victorious warrior, and a figure touched by the mythical forces of the world. This helmet was not meant for the battlefield. Its delicate gilding and intricate panels would have been impractical in a fight. Instead, it was ceremonial armor, worn on occasions of state to literally mask the king's mortal humanity and present him as a living icon of power, a descendant of heroes and a partner of dragons. Therefore, the hidden message of the Sutton Hoo helmet is a multi-layered proclamation of legitimacy. For the living subjects who saw their king wear it, the helmet was a constant visual reminder of his right to rule, his connection to legendary ancestors, and his divine mandate. For the king himself, it was a piece of his eternal identity, a passport to the heroic afterlife where he would take his place among the greats. And for us, centuries later, it is a key that unlocks a door into the Anglo-Saxon mind. It reveals a world where history, myth, and political power were not separate realms, but were woven together into a single fabric. The helmet tells us that in the dimly lit halls of early England, authority was not just taken by force. It was carefully crafted, symbol by symbol, and worn upon the face for all to see and believe. While the grand stone stelae of the Maya showcased their mastery of cyclical time, their most sophisticated astronomical knowledge was preserved in a far more fragile medium, the bark paper codex. Of the thousands of books that once filled the libraries of Mayan cities, only 3 are known to have survived the humid climate of the jungle and the destructive fires of European conquest. The most famous of these is the Dresden Codex, a 74-page accordion-folded book that dates to the 11th or 12th century. At first glance, its pages are a beautiful chaos of vibrant red and black glyphs and intricate illustrations of gods and animals. But for decades, scholars who painstakingly pieced together its meaning realized it was not a storybook or a simple priestly manual. It is, in essence, a sophisticated astronomical almanac, and its most staggering hidden message is a series of tables dedicated to the planet Venus, achieving a level of predictive accuracy that would not be matched in Europe for centuries. The Maya did not see Venus as a simple, inert point of light. They knew it by two names reflecting its dual nature in their cosmology. As the morning star appearing in the east before sunrise, it was No-Ek, the great star. But when it vanished and reappeared as the evening star in the west after sunset, it became Zux-Ek, the wasp star. This shifting identity was central to its meaning. The Maya observed that Venus goes through a very precise 584-day cycle, which includes periods where it is visible as the morning star, then disappears in conjunction with the sun, reappears as the evening star, and disappears again. Their astronomers, using generations of naked eye observation, calculated this cycle with an error of just 1 day in 500 years. This mathematical precision alone is a testament to their intellectual achievement, but the true hidden message lies in what they believed this cycle meant for life on Earth. For the Maya, the movements of Venus were not neutral astronomical events. They were the direct actions of a god, and this god was intimately tied to warfare. They associated Venus with one of their most important and fearsome deities, Kukulkan, known to the Aztecs as Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. Specifically, the Venus pages in the Dresden Codex depict the god descending from the sky, armed with spears and poised to hurl them down upon the world. The Codex served as a celestial timetable for conflict. The periods when Venus was making its transition, particularly when it reappeared as the morning star after a period of invisibility, were considered moments of extreme danger and potent opportunity. The hidden message encoded in the columns of numbers and the accompanying glyphs was a guide for scheduling war. A king planning a raid or a major battle would consult these tables with his priests. Launching an attack under the correct Venus phase was believed to channel the chaotic, destructive energy of the god, ensuring victory and providing divine sanction for the bloodshed to come. Warfare was thus transformed from a mere political act into a ritual performance aligned with the cosmos. The Dresden Codex goes even further, offering a haunting glimpse into how the Maya believed different phases of the Venus cycle would bring different fates. The tables are accompanied by ominous imagery that serves as a form of celestial forecasting. Some pages show the rain god, Chok, associated with life-giving water, which might predict a successful campaign that would bring wealth and captives. Other sections depict the death god holding decapitated heads, a clear warning that a military venture launched under that specific alignment could lead to disaster, defeat, and the death of the king himself. This transforms the Codex from a simple calendar into a complex risk assessment tool. The hidden message was not just when to fight, but what the likely outcome would be based on the precise celestial conditions. It reveals a worldview where human destiny was not a matter of chance but was written in the stars, a predictable equation of divinity, timing, and violence. Ultimately, the Venus tables of the Dresden Codex present a profound synthesis of science and belief. The Maya applied rigorous, long-term observation and complex mathematics to understand the mechanics of the heavens, but they interpreted the results through a spiritual lens. The planet's predictable cycle confirmed their belief in a cyclical, ordered universe where the gods communicated their will through celestial signs. The Codex is therefore more than an artifact. It is a bridge between two ways of knowing. It shows us a civilization that could simultaneously calculate the orbit of a planet with stunning accuracy and see in that same orbit the spear-throwing arm of a war god. This intertwining of the empirical and the divine is the ultimate hidden message, challenging our modern separation of science and religion and reminding us that the quest to understand the heavens has always been driven by a very human need to find meaning and power in the patterns of the night sky. Leaving behind the grand astronomical predictions of the Maya, we now turn to a story of faith that had to be so carefully concealed. Its symbols were hidden in plain sight. Our journey takes us to Japan in the early 17th century, a time when the flourishing Christian community faced a brutal and systematic crackdown. Following the unification of Japan under the Tokugawa shogunate, Christianity was seen as a subversive foreign influence, a threat to the social order. What began as a period of tolerance turned into violent persecution, with missionaries expelled and Japanese converts forced to renounce their faith under pain of torture and death. It was in this furnace of oppression that a remarkable and secretive community was forged, the Kakyo Karishitan, or hidden Christians. To survive, they could not build churches or display crosses. Instead, they became masters of visual deception, embedding their most sacred messages into the most ordinary of objects, creating a silent, underground language of devotion that would endure for over 200 years. One of the most poignant examples of this clandestine art is the transformation of a beloved Buddhist icon into a secret vessel for Christian veneration. The Kakyo Karishitan took statues of Kannon, the bodhisattva of compassion and mercy, and reinterpreted them. To any official conducting a raid, these were simply common household Buddhist idols. But to a hidden Christian, a particular detail revealed its true meaning. Some Kannon statues were depicted holding a child, which in Buddhism represents Kannon's vow to aid all sentient beings. For the Karishitan, this image was powerfully reinterpreted as the Virgin Mary holding the infant Jesus. The subtlety was their shield. The statue's outer form provided a perfect disguise, while its inner meaning, known only to the initiated, allowed for prayer and contemplation. This was not an act of syncretism where two beliefs merge, but a deliberate and clever act of protective mimicry. The faithful could kneel before what appeared to be a Buddhist altar, all the while directing their prayers to the Holy Mother, their true devotion invisible to the persecuting eye. This hidden message was one of profound spiritual resilience, demonstrating that faith could not be eradicated by outward force, but would instead find new and inventive ways to express itself. Beyond statues, the hidden Christians turned to the objects of their daily lives to create a network of secret signs. Fishing communities, which were common among the Karishitan in regions like Nagasaki, used their trade to craft ingenious identifiers. They created gozi, or fishing floats made of glass or pottery. To a casual observer, these were purely functional objects used to keep nets afloat. But upon closer inspection, a hidden cross or a simple Marian symbol might be etched into the glass or painted on the inside of a hollow ceramic float. A fisherman meeting a stranger could casually display this object. If the other person recognized the symbol, it was a silent, safe confirmation of shared belief. Similarly, family heirlooms like tansu chests or everyday pottery sometimes contained secret compartments with tiny crosses or images of saints carved into the wood or clay, often in places that would only be seen by someone who knew exactly where to look. These were not just hiding places, they were a sacred geography mapped onto the mundane, a way to sanctify everyday life and maintain a constant, secret connection to God. Perhaps the most touching hidden messages were those woven into the very rituals the Kakyo Karishitan developed to replace the sacraments they could no longer receive from priests. Without clergy, they created their own prayers, which were often spoken aloud to sound like Buddhist chants but contained coded Christian words or names. They also used visual cues during these gatherings. A simple geta, or wooden sandal, might be placed by the door with the straps arranged in a specific pattern to signal that a secret prayer meeting was in progress. A woven mat might have a pattern that, when viewed from a certain angle, revealed a cross. The ultimate purpose of all these hidden symbols was twofold: to preserve the community's identity and to facilitate worship without detection. They allowed parents to pass their faith onto their children in a way that was safe, using these disguised objects as teaching tools. A mother could point to the Canon Mary statue and whisper the true story to her daughter, ensuring that the knowledge survived generation after generation, entirely through oral tradition and secret observation. The legacy of the Kakyor Kurishiten is a powerful testament to the human spirit's need for belief and belonging. When Japan reopened to the world in the 19th century and missionaries returned, they discovered to their astonishment that these hidden communities had not only survived but had maintained a distinct form of Christianity, albeit one that had evolved in isolation. Their hidden messages, born from necessity, became a unique and enduring part of their cultural identity. These artifacts, the disguised statues, the etched fishing floats, the coded prayers, tell a story not of defiance through rebellion, but of resilience through subtlety. They remind us that the most powerful messages are not always shouted from the rooftops. Sometimes they are whispered through the careful arrangement of everyday objects, a quiet but unbreakable thread of faith woven into the fabric of daily life, waiting patiently for a time when it could once again be seen in the light. Nestled within the serene grounds of Shugborough Hall in Staffordshire, England, an elegant 18th-century monument stands as a quiet affront to the age of reason in which it was built. Known as the Shepherd's Monument, it was commissioned by Thomas Anson, a wealthy landowner, and crafted by the Flemish sculptor Peter Scheemakers. At first glance, it appears to be a typical piece of aristocratic garden art, a marble relief depicting a pastoral scene inspired by Nicholas Poussin's famous painting, The Shepherds of Arcadia. In that painting, 3 shepherds and a mysterious woman are gathered around a tomb, pointing to the engraved words, Et in Arcadia ego, even in Arcadia I am here, a memento mori reminding us that death exists even in paradise. The Shugborough relief replicates this scene with one crucial and baffling addition. Carved into the stone below the main image is a sequence of 10 letters that has resisted decipherment for over 250 years. OUOSVAVV, framed between 2 unmistakable letter Ds. The immediate and most persistent theory connects this inscription directly to the enigmatic painting it recreates. Poussin's The Shepherds of Arcadia has long been a cornerstone of alternative history and Grail legends, largely due to its prominence in books like The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail and later the Da Vinci Code. Proponents of this theory suggest that the monument is not merely a decorative copy, but a literal clue left by a secret society, perhaps the Knights Templar or the Priory of Sion, pointing to the hidden location of the Holy Grail. They argue that the Ansons were part of an elite network of families privy to this ancient secret. The inscription, in this light, is a cipher that, if solved, would unlock one of history's greatest mysteries. The 2 capital Ds that bookend the code are often interpreted as an abbreviation for De or Domini, lending a sacred weight to the puzzle. While captivating, this theory is heavily reliant on speculative connections and lacks any concrete evidence from the Anson family papers, placing it firmly in the realm of compelling legend rather than historical fact. A more grounded, yet equally romantic, explanation posits that the code is a hidden love letter or a poignant tribute. Thomas Anson was a lifelong bachelor, and his younger brother, Admiral George Anson, was a national hero who circumnavigated the globe but also died without a direct heir. Some researchers have proposed that the letters are an acronym for a Latin prayer or a philosophical maxim. One popular suggestion is the phrase Optimi uxoris optimi sororis vidus amantissimus vovit virtutibus, which translates to best of wives, best of sisters, a most devoted widower vows to your virtues. This would make it a touching memorial from a bereaved husband, but it doesn't neatly fit the Anson family history. Another Latin possibility is Orator ut omnia sunt vanitas et vanitas vanitatum, meaning, the orator says, all is vanity, vanity of vanities, a melancholic reflection on the futility of life that echoes the memento mori theme of the original painting. These linguistic solutions are elegant, but they remain unverified guesses, as no definitive document has been found to confirm any specific phrase. Perhaps the most elegant solution, and one that draws on the monument's own imagery, comes from the world of poetry. In 2012, a researcher named A.J. Morton proposed that the code is not a complex cipher, but a simple reference to the first letters of each line in a poem. He suggested the verse might be a love poem by the 16th century poet John Donne, but the fit was imperfect. A more compelling possibility is that the letters correspond to the initial words of a classical pastoral poem, now lost or obscure, that would have been familiar to the educated circles in which Thomas Anson moved. The key might not lie in grand conspiracies, but in the private literary world of the Anson family. The code could have been an inside joke or a sentimental gesture, its meaning clear only to a small group of intimates. The true message in this interpretation was never meant for the public or for future generations of codebreakers. It was a personal token whose significance died with its intended audience. This leads to the most profound aspect of the Shepherd's Monument's mystery. Unlike the Voynich Manuscript locked away in a vault or the Rongorongo tablets hidden from Western eyes for centuries, this puzzle is carved in plain sight on a public-facing monument in an English country garden. It is a brazen act of secrecy, a message that is both utterly exposed and completely impenetrable. This public privacy is the heart of its enigma. It suggests that the code was intended for a specific person or group who possessed the key, a key that has been lost to time. The monument itself becomes a metaphor for the fragility of knowledge. It stands as a permanent reminder that the most important meanings are not always inscribed in the message itself, but in the shared context between the sender and the receiver. Without that living context, the most deliberate communication can become a mere sequence of characters, a whisper from the past whose sound we can hear, but whose words we can no longer understand. The Shepherd's Monument, therefore, is not just a puzzle to be solved. It is a lesson in the ephemeral nature of human connection and the silent stories that are etched into history, waiting for a key that may never be found. Now, from the secret codes of English gardens and the silent watch of terracotta armies, we turn our gaze upward to a ceiling in Egypt where the entire night sky was carved in stone. In the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, a sprawling complex dedicated to the goddess of love, music, and the sky, lies one of the most beautiful and controversial celestial maps ever created. Known as the Dendera Zodiac, this large, circular bas-relief was once a vibrant part of the temple's ceiling, a stunning depiction of the heavens that offers a hidden message about a pivotal moment of cultural fusion in the ancient world. Its story begins with a dramatic and, some would say, act of archaeological appropriation. In the 1820s, French Egyptologist Jean-François Champollion, the very man who had just deciphered the Rosetta Stone, visited Dendera. He immediately recognized the zodiac's significance, but it was a fellow Frenchman, the antiquities collector Sébastien Louis Saulnier, who orchestrated its removal. Using saws and gunpowder, workers carefully and brutally cut the entire panel from the ceiling, a process that nearly caused the roof to collapse. It was then transported to France, where it now resides in the Louvre Museum, a magnificent but displaced artifact that speaks volumes about both ancient astronomy and 19th century colonial attitudes toward cultural heritage. The zodiac itself is a breathtaking work of art, a circular disc supported by 4 women representing the cardinal directions, while figures of the gods and spirits hold up the outer rim. But the true marvel is the intricate arrangement of constellations at its heart. The hidden message of the Dendera zodiac is not one of pure, ancient Egyptian tradition, but rather a sophisticated and fascinating hybrid. It was carved during the Greco-Roman period, around 50 years before the Common Era, a time when Egypt was under the rule of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the final line of pharaohs descended from one of Alexander the Great's generals. This was an era of intense cultural exchange, and the zodiac is a perfect reflection of that. We see the familiar figures of the Babylonian and Greek zodiac, the bull of Taurus, the scorpion of Scorpio, the scales of Libra superimposed upon a much older Egyptian celestial tradition. The ram, for instance, is not just Aries, it is also associated with the Egyptian god Ammon, who was sometimes depicted with ram's horns. This blending of systems reveals an ancient effort to harmonize different worldviews, to create a unified map of the cosmos that acknowledged both the new influences from the Mediterranean and the deep, indigenous beliefs of the Nile. So, what was the purpose of this elaborate celestial chart? It was far more than decorative. The temple at Dendera was a center of immense religious importance, and the zodiac's location on the ceiling of a chapel dedicated to Osiris, the god of the afterlife, is highly significant. Egyptologists believe it served as a complex astronomical calendar and a ritual guide. By observing the positions of the constellations depicted, priests could accurately determine the timing of important religious festivals that were tied to the agricultural cycle, such as the New Year's festival, which coincided with the annual flooding of the Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt. The rising of specific stars, like the dog star Sirius, was a critical event that heralded this flood. The zodiac, therefore, was a practical tool for maintaining the ritual rhythm of the kingdom, ensuring that ceremonies were performed at the cosmologically correct moment to maintain order or mat and secure the favor of the gods. Beyond its practical function, the Dendera zodiac encodes a deeper, more philosophical message about the Egyptian understanding of time and the universe. Unlike our modern view of a linear progression, the Egyptians, like the Maya, saw time as cyclical. The movement of the stars and planets was not a random journey but part of a great eternal circuit of death and rebirth. The presence of the 5 known planets Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, moving through the constellations of the zodiac, reinforced this belief. The entire panel can be interpreted as a giant clock, measuring the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that causes the position of the constellations to shift over a 26,000-year cycle. Some researchers have even suggested that the specific arrangement of figures represents a snapshot of a significant astronomical alignment, perhaps dating back to a much earlier mythical age. This transforms the zodiac from a simple calendar into a symbolic representation of the entire cosmic order, a stone-carved testament to the belief that the rhythms of the heavens and the fate of the earth were inextricably linked. The hidden message of the Dendera zodiac is ultimately one of harmony, a declaration that human life, divine will, and the celestial machinery were all part of one magnificent, interconnected whole. But for a message to be truly hidden, it does not always need the patina of centuries. Some of the most urgent and powerful communications from the human spirit are being painted onto city walls right now, destined to become the historical artifacts of tomorrow. In the world of contemporary street art, no figure embodies this idea more than the enigmatic artist known as Banksy. His work, often created under the cover of darkness, transforms public spaces into arenas for sharp social and political critique. While not ancient, Banksy's art functions as a modern-day oracle, using the universal language of visual satire to embed hidden messages about the pressing issues of our time: war, inequality, and the seductive trap of consumerism. The very impermanence of his medium, subject to weathering, removal, or even destruction, echoes the fragile nature of historical testimony itself, making each piece a poignant, present-tense artifact. To understand the hidden message in Banksy's work, one must first appreciate his chosen method, the stencil. This is not the spontaneous spray of classic graffiti. It is a technique of precise, premeditated replication. The stencil allows for speed, which is essential for an artist operating outside the law, but it also carries a deeper symbolic weight. The stencil is a tool of the system used for official signage, military markings, and industrial labeling. By appropriating this tool, Banksy subverts it. He uses the language of authority and uniformity to deliver messages that are profoundly anti-authoritarian and uniquely human. The clean, graphic lines of a stenciled image can be reproduced perfectly, allowing the same potent critique to appear simultaneously on walls from London to Gaza, creating a distributed network of dissent that challenges the very notion of controlled public space. The medium itself, therefore, is part of the hidden message, a declaration that the tools of control can be repurposed for liberation. Perhaps no single piece encapsulates the layered complexity of his messaging better than Girl with a Balloon. At face value, it is a simple, almost sentimental image. A young girl in a dress reaches upward toward a red, heart-shaped balloon that is just slipping from her grasp. The execution is charming, but the hidden meaning is a masterclass in bittersweet commentary. The balloon, a universal symbol of childhood innocence and fleeting joy, is shaped like a heart, representing love, hope, and vulnerability. The fact that it is escaping speaks directly to lost innocence, broken promises, and the erosion of hope in a cynical world. The piece resonates on a deeply personal level, but it also functions as a broader political allegory. It could be seen as a critique of unfulfilled political pledges, the loss of societal compassion, or the elusive nature of simple human happiness in a world dominated by materialism and conflict. Its power lies in its ambiguity. It is a Rorschach test for the viewer's own anxieties and losses. This ambiguity was weaponized into a definitive statement during a legendary event at a Sotheby's auction in London in 2018. The moment after his painting Girl with a Balloon was sold for over £1 million, a hidden mechanism within the frame whirred to life, and the canvas began to slide downward through a built-in shredder, leaving half of it dangling in strips. The art world watched in stunned silence as the piece literally self-destructed. Banksy later released a video of the stunt with the caption, "Going, going, gone." This was not mere vandalism. It was a perfectly executed hidden message about the absurdity of the art market and the commodification of dissent. The artist had embedded a literal time bomb of critique within the artwork, a protest against the very system that was celebrating it. The balloon was not just slipping away. The entire concept of art as a sterile, inflated commodity was being publicly shredded. The message was clear: true artistic value cannot be contained by a frame or a price tag. In one audacious act, Banksy turned a moment of high commerce into a profound performance piece about authenticity, transience, and the ultimate futility of trying to own an idea. If Girl with a Balloon offers a more universal, poetic critique, Banksy's work in conflict zones like Gaza and the West Bank delivers a message with surgical, devastating precision. Here, the hidden messages are not subtle. They are urgent cries against the brutal reality of war and occupation. On a wall in Gaza, he stenciled an image of a kitten playing with a ball of tangled string. The charming scene is utterly demolished by its context. The kitten is perched on the only remaining wall of a house demolished by an airstrike. The hidden message here is one of jarring juxtaposition. The innocent, playful animal highlights the horrific destruction of a child's world, suggesting that even the most basic symbols of safety and domesticity have been obliterated. In another piece, he painted a solitary figure looking through a telescope. Instead of seeing stars, the telescope reveals a tropical island with a palm tree, a pathetic fallacy painted on the concrete of the vast separation wall. This piece, titled Bomb Hugger, is a heartbreaking commentary on the imprisonment of an entire population and the human need for escape, for a glimpse of a world beyond the grim reality of confinement. The hidden message in all of Banksy's art, from the auction house to the war zone, is ultimately a call to awareness. He forces viewers to see their environment with new eyes. A simple wall becomes a billboard for protest, a shredded painting becomes a statement on value, a playful image becomes a testament to resilience. His use of dark humor and clever visual puns makes the medicine of harsh critique easier to swallow, engaging people who might otherwise turn away from overtly political art. Banksy demonstrates that hidden messages are not a relic of the past. they are a vital, living tool for communication in an age of information overload and sanctioned narratives. He proves that the most powerful historical artifacts are often those that speak directly to the conscience of their own time, using whatever canvas is available, even and especially the walls that try to divide us. From the concrete walls of modern protest, we now travel 17,000 years back in time, to a world where the very concept of art was being born in the flickering torchlight of subterranean cathedrals. In 1940, in the Dordogne region of France, a group of teenagers and their dog, Robot, stumbled upon one of the most significant archaeological sites in the world, the Lascaux Caves. What they found was not a hidden code or a cryptic inscription, but something far more primal and direct. A breathtaking gallery of over 600 paintings and nearly 1,500 engravings depicting horses, aurochs, stags, and bison in stunning, vibrant detail. For decades, the prevailing theory was straightforward. This was hunting magic. The artists, our Paleolithic ancestors, were painting their prey to ensure a successful hunt, a form of sympathetic magic to capture the spirit of the animal and guarantee its flesh would feed the tribe. But as we look closer at the placement and nature of these images, a more complex and profound hidden message emerges, one that suggests the cave was not a simple canvas, but a sacred portal to another reality. The first clue to this deeper purpose lies in the sheer physical challenge of the artwork's location. The most spectacular panels are not near the cave entrance in the comfortable daylight zone. They are deep within the labyrinth, in chambers that can only be reached by crawling through narrow, treacherous passages, often descending into complete and utter darkness. To create these masterpieces, the artists had to haul their materials, ochre, charcoal, and makeshift lamps burning animal fat, on a difficult and dangerous journey. This was not a casual or convenient activity. The immense effort involved signals that the act of painting was itself a ritual, a rite of passage. The journey into the belly of the earth was a symbolic descent, a leaving behind of the mundane world of sunlight and daily survival. The hidden message is in the geography. This art was meant for a specific, sacred context, accessible only to those willing to undergo the physical and psychological ordeal of entering the deep cave. This leads to the compelling shamanic theory, which interprets the cave as a stage for spiritual voyages. In many indigenous cultures around the world, shamans are intermediaries who enter altered states of consciousness to travel to the spirit world, often seeking healing, knowledge, or the favor of animal spirits. The deep, sensory-depriving environment of a cave, the total silence, the oppressive darkness, the constant temperature, and the faint, flickering light of a grease lamp is ideal for inducing trance-like states. The rhythmic sound of dripping water and one's own heartbeat could further alter perception. In this context, the cave wall itself transforms. It ceases to be a solid barrier of rock and becomes a membrane, a thin veil between the world of the living and the world of the spirits. The paintings were not just representations, they were visions made permanent. A shaman in a trance might have seen these animals emerging from the rock, and by tracing their forms with pigment, they were capturing and communing with their essence. The imagery itself supports this idea. The animals are not always painted in static, natural poses. Some appear to be floating or are stacked upon one another in a way that defies normal perspective. More tellingly, there are rare but fascinating depictions of composite beings, figures that are part human and part animal. The most famous of these is in a shaft at Lascaux, a scene now called the Scene of the Dead Man. It shows a bird-headed man with an erect phallus lying prone before a wounded bison whose entrails are spilling out. A bird on a staff stands nearby. This is not a literal record of a hunting accident. It is far more likely a snapshot of a shamanic vision. The bird-headed man could represent the shaman himself, whose spirit has taken on an animal form to journey into the spirit world. The confrontation with the powerful, dying bison might symbolize a struggle with a powerful spirit, a ritual death and rebirth that the shaman must undergo to acquire power or knowledge for his people. Therefore, the hidden message of Lascaux is not a sentence to be read, but an experience to be understood. It encodes an entire cosmology, a belief system where the natural and supernatural worlds were intimately connected. The aurochs, the horses, and the stags were not just food, they were powerful spiritual beings. By navigating the dark labyrinth and bringing these beings to life on the walls, the Paleolithic people were engaging in the most fundamental of human activities, seeking meaning beyond mere survival. They were using art as a technology of the sacred, a way to map the invisible geography of the spirit world and secure their place within it. The caves stand as a testament to the birth of human spirituality, a hidden message from our deepest past that whispers we have always been a species that looks into the darkness and tries to paint with light. After the raw, primal spirituality of the Lascaux caves, we witness humanity's spiritual aspirations reaching literally for the heavens, crafted not in pigment on rough stone, but in light and geometry upon a monumental scale. The Gothic cathedrals of medieval Europe, with their impossibly tall spires and walls of stained glass, are often seen as the ultimate expression of faith. But to view them as merely large churches is to miss their deepest secret. These structures are, in fact, the most sophisticated hidden messages ever encoded in architecture. They are three-dimensional sermons built not just to house worshippers, but to instruct, transform, and elevate them using a silent, universal language, sacred geometry. At the heart of this architectural code lies a profound belief that the universe itself was created by a divine geometer, and that by building according to these cosmic principles, humans could create a microcosm of heaven on earth. The cathedral was intended to be a bridge between the material and the spiritual worlds, and every arch, every window, and every vault was a carefully placed stone in that bridge. This philosophy is nowhere more evident than in the Chartres Cathedral in France, a masterpiece that serves as a textbook of stone. The hidden message begins not with the building itself, but with the ground plan. The architects did not simply mark out a rectangle, they began with a single, perfect circle. This circle, representing divine unity and perfection, was then used to generate all other forms. By inscribing geometric shapes within it, specifically the square and the triangle, they established the fundamental ratios that would govern the entire cathedral's proportions. One of the most important of these ratios is the golden ratio, often represented by the Greek letter phi, approximately 1.618 to 1. This ratio appears repeatedly in nature, from the spiral of a nautilus shell to the arrangement of leaves on a stem. For the medieval mind, this was not a coincidence, it was proof of a divine blueprint underlying all of creation. By incorporating phi into the cathedral's dimensions, for instance, in the relationship between the width of the nave and the height of the columns, the builders were embedding a signature of the Creator into the very fabric of their work. The building itself became a declaration that the same mathematical harmony that orders the cosmos also resonates within these holy walls. This geometric coding extends to more complex symbols, most notably the pentagram. While often associated in modern times with the occult, to the medieval scholar, the pentagram was a potent Christian symbol. Its 5 points represented the 5 wounds of Christ, and its intricate geometry, where every line segment is in golden ratio proportion to the next, made it a perfect emblem of divine harmony and protection. At Chartres, the pentagram is not overtly carved for all to see. It is hidden in the very layout of the cathedral's crossing and transepts. When the geometry of the floor plan is analyzed, the pentagram emerges as a fundamental organizing principle, governing the placement of piers and the flow of space. This hidden pentagram was not a secret to be kept from the faithful, but a deeper layer of meaning to be discovered by the initiated. A reminder that God's protection and the mystery of Christ's sacrifice were the unseen foundations upon which the entire visible structure rested. But the most immediate and overwhelming hidden message of the Gothic cathedral is one of verticality. The primary goal was to create a sense of soaring elevation to draw the eye and the soul upward. This was achieved through revolutionary engineering innovations like the pointed arch, the ribbed vault, and the flying buttress. These features were not merely technical solutions to the problem of building tall, they were theological statements. The pointed arch, in particular, seems to reach ambitiously toward the sky in a way the rounded Romanesque arch never could. The complex network of ribs in the vaulting creates a stone skeleton that appears both incredibly strong and miraculously light, like the branching of a heavenly tree. And the flying buttresses, those graceful stone arms leaping away from the building, allowed the walls to be largely replaced by windows. This was the final and perhaps most brilliant part of the message. By dissolving the walls into vast sheets of stained glass, the architects transformed solid stone into a medium for divine light. The sun streaming through these windows, casting pools of ruby, sapphire, and emerald onto the floor, was a physical manifestation of the lux Dei, the light of God, illuminating the faithful within. The hidden geometry of the structure was designed to harness this light, to make the building not just a symbol of heaven, but an experience of it. The cathedral was a machine for generating transcendence, using mathematics and physics to create a space where the earthly realm seemed to dissolve, and the soul felt itself pulled into the presence of the divine. While grand cathedrals encoded their messages in stone and light, the fate of a revolution once depended on messages that were not meant to be seen at all. In the desperate early years of the American Revolution, General George Washington was fighting an enemy with superior numbers, supplies, and naval power. To survive, he needed an advantage that brute force could not provide: perfect intelligence. The solution was the creation of America's first professional spy network, the Culper Ring, a small, clandestine group operating behind British lines in New York. Their greatest weapon was not a pistol or a cipher, but a seemingly blank piece of paper. The hidden messages they carried were written in a substance that was completely invisible to the naked eye, a secret ink that turned mundane correspondence into a silent, potent force for liberty. This ink, known as a sympathetic ink, was a chemical marvel of its time. The Culper Ring's primary agent, a methodical merchant named Robert Townsend, who operated under the codename Culper Jr., used a solution of ferrous sulfate. To write a secret message, he would simply dip a fine quill into this clear liquid and inscribe his intelligence between the lines of an ordinary letter, or on what appeared to be a blank sheet of paper. Once the fluid dried, it left behind no trace, no shine, no texture, nothing but a seemingly empty page. A letter discussing the price of tobacco or the health of a relative could, in reality, be packed with details about British troop deployments, naval schedules, or the fortifications of New York City. The hidden message was literally hiding in plain sight, its existence known only to the sender and the intended recipient who possessed the key to its revelation. That key was a specific chemical developer. For the ferrous sulfate ink to become visible, the paper had to be brushed with a second substance, most commonly a solution of sodium carbonate or tannic acid. When this developer was applied, a chemical reaction would occur. The invisible ferrous sulfate would oxidize, turning a pale blue or greenish color, and the secret writing would magically appear. The process was simple yet brilliantly effective. A courier known as a culper could carry these letters through British checkpoints with near total impunity. Even if a suspicious officer held the paper up to the light or examined it for pinpricks or other common spy tricks, he would find nothing amiss. The system's security was so trusted that it was used to transmit some of the war's most critical intelligence, including information that exposed the betrayal of Benedict Arnold and thwarted a British plan to ambush the newly arriving French fleet. What makes this hidden message system so profound is its demonstration of how the simplest artifacts can carry the weight of history. We often imagine historical turning points being decided by grand battles or sweeping declarations, but the Culpa ring reminds us that victory can also hinge on a whisper, a suspicion, and a few ounces of chemical solution on a scrap of paper. That blank sheet was more powerful than any cannonball because it carried knowledge. It informed General Washington of enemy weaknesses, allowed him to conserve his fragile army, and gave him the confidence to make strategic gambles. The invisible ink was a tool that leveraged intellect over instinct, allowing a fledgling nation to outthink its far more powerful adversary. It stands as a timeless testament to the power of information and the quiet, ingenious ways that the determined find to make their voices heard, even when they must speak in complete silence. Carved into the vibrant red sandstone cliffs of southern Jordan, the city of Petra stands as one of the world's most iconic archaeological wonders. For most, its image is defined by the breathtaking facade of Al-Kosneh, the treasury made famous by Hollywood. But to focus solely on this ornate tomb is to overlook the city's true masterpiece, a hidden message written not in stone but in water. The real genius of Petra lies not in what was carved out of the rock, but in what the Nabateans channeled through it. In the heart of a punishing desert where rainfall is scarce and flash floods are devastatingly sudden, they engineered a complex hydraulic system so advanced that it allowed a metropolis of perhaps 30,000 people to not just survive, but to thrive with Roman-style baths, lush gardens, and public fountains. This intricate network of channels, dams, and cisterns is the city's silent, flowing secret, a testament to a civilization that understood its greatest battle was not against rival empires, but against the desert itself. The challenge the Nabateans faced was immense. The site of Petra is a natural fortress, surrounded by imposing mountains and accessible only through a narrow, winding canyon known as the Sick. While this provided excellent security, it also created a deadly hydrological trap. The entire surrounding highland plateau acts as a massive catchment area for rainwater. During the region's infrequent but violent winter storms, water would funnel into the Sick with terrifying speed and force, transforming the canyon into a raging torrent capable of scouring everything in its path. The hidden message of their engineering is one of profound adaptation. Instead of trying to fight this natural phenomenon, they learned to harness it. They constructed a series of diversion dams at the head of wadis, the dry riverbeds that feed into the Sick. These dams were strategically placed to intercept the floodwaters, redirecting them into a main conduit that ran along the side of the Sick. This primary channel, carved directly into the cliff face and sometimes lined with ceramic pipes, was sloped with a precise gradient to maintain a steady, controlled flow. Walking through the Sick today, a visitor can still see the evidence of this ancient waterworks. A narrow channel, often covered with stone slabs to prevent evaporation and contamination, runs alongside the path. Small terracotta pipes, part of the distribution network, are still visible in sections. The system was designed with extraordinary foresight. Settlement tanks were built at intervals, allowing silt and debris to settle out of the water before it continued its journey into the city. This ensured that the water reaching Petra's heart was clean. The culmination of this gravity-fed system was a large, circular public fountain at the end of the Sick, where fresh water would have greeted travelers and citizens alike, a powerful symbol of Nabatean hospitality and control, announcing that in this harsh environment they commanded the most precious resource of all. Beyond the public display, the water management extended to every household. The Nabateans carved over 200 cisterns into the surrounding hillsides, some capable of holding thousands of gallons. These cisterns were fed by a network of smaller channels that captured every possible drop of runoff from cliffs and rooftops. They were meticulously plastered to be waterproof and were often covered to keep the water cool and free of debris. This decentralized approach meant that individual homes and neighborhoods had their own private water reserves, providing security against periods of drought or potential siege. The system's sophistication reveals a hidden message about the source of Petra's wealth. While it was indeed a crucial hub on the incense trade route linking Arabia to the Mediterranean, its prosperity was fundamentally built on water. The ability to provide reliable water to caravans of thousands of camels and their handlers made Petra an irresistible oasis. Traders would pay taxes and tariffs for the privilege of resting and resupplying in a city where their animals could drink and they could bathe. The water system was not just a utility, it was the economic engine of the kingdom. Ultimately, the true message of Petra's hidden hydrology is one of sustainable ingenuity. The Nabateans did not deplete their environment, they worked with it in a delicate balance. Their system was designed for the long term, capable of weathering the climatic extremes of the desert for centuries. When the Roman Empire eventually absorbed the Nabatean kingdom, they were so impressed by this hydraulic mastery that they largely left the system in place and even expanded upon it. The fall of Petra centuries later coincided with a major earthquake that likely shattered the very channels and cisterns that had sustained it. Without the ability to maintain this complex system, the city's lifeblood was cut off and the desert slowly reclaimed its streets. The silent, dry channels of Petra today are a poignant reminder that the greatest civilizations are those that solve the most fundamental problems, and that sometimes the most powerful messages are not carved in grand facades, but are etched into the very landscape by the gentle, persistent flow of water. After the intricate, silent languages of ancient monuments and coded inks, we encounter a hidden message that was not meant to be deciphered in a library or a laboratory, but proven on the open ocean. In the middle of the 20th century, as the world was rebuilding from a global war, a young Norwegian ethnographer named Thor Heyerdahl made a radical proposal that flew in the face of established science. He argued that the peopling of the remote islands of Polynesia was not a one-way street from Asia, as most scholars believed. Instead, he saw a hidden connection in the wind, the currents, and the legends of the people themselves. He proposed that ancient South Americans riding the powerful Humboldt Current on simple balsa wood rafts could have been the first to reach islands like Easter Island. The academic world dismissed him. The prevailing wisdom held that pre-Columbian peoples lacked the vessels and the navigational skill for such a monumental crossing. So Heyerdahl decided to send a message not with a paper but with a raft. He would recreate the voyage himself, turning a theoretical hypothesis into a breathtaking physical experiment. The vessel he built was a statement in itself, naming it the Kon-Tiki after the Inca sun god. Heyerdahl and his small crew constructed it using only the materials and technologies that would have been available to indigenous South Americans centuries ago. They cut down 9 giant balsa logs in the Ecuadorian jungle, lashed them together with hemp ropes, and erected a simple square sail made of woven bamboo. There was no metal, no engine, no modern navigation equipment beyond a radio. To the experts, it looked like a hopelessly primitive craft, a death trap for anyone daring to challenge the might of the Pacific. But that was precisely the point. The Kon-Tiki raft was the argument. Its design was a direct challenge to the notion that such a journey was impossible. If he and his crew could survive the 4,300-mile journey from Peru to Polynesia on this exact type of raft, then the hidden message would be clear. Our ancestors were far more capable and adventurous mariners than we ever gave them credit for. The voyage itself, chronicled in a book and an Academy Award-winning documentary, became a global sensation. For 101 days, the Kon-Tiki was at the mercy of the elements, pushed westward by the trade winds and the current. The crew fished for food, collected rainwater, and battled storms, all while living on a deck that was constantly awash with the sea. They witnessed the incredible biodiversity of the open ocean and experienced firsthand how a raft of this design, with its flexible, waterlogged logs, actually rode the waves instead of fighting them. The journey was a grueling testament to human endurance, but its true purpose was always anthropological. Every day they survived was another piece of evidence added to Heyerdahl's case. When the raft finally crashed onto the reef of the Raroya Atoll in the Tuamotu Islands, the message had been delivered. A group of modern men using ancient technology had successfully crossed the Pacific. The voyage did not definitively prove that South Americans did settle Polynesia. Genetic and linguistic evidence would later strongly favor the Asian origin theory, but it powerfully demonstrated that they could have. The hidden message of the Kon-Tiki, therefore, is more nuanced than a simple yes or no. Its greatest impact was to shatter a paradigm of impossibility. It forced archaeologists and historians to radically reconsider the scope of ancient seafaring. No longer could they dismiss transoceanic contact as a fantasy. Heyerdahl's daring experiment opened the door to serious consideration of other potential pre-Columbian contacts, such as the possibility of Polynesian voyages reaching the coast of South America, an idea that is now supported by compelling evidence like the presence of the sweet potato, a new world crop, in Polynesia long before European contact. The Kon-Tiki's message is one of boundless human potential. It reminds us that history is not just found in dusty tombs, but is also written in the courage to test an idea against the greatest forces of nature. The raft itself, now housed in a museum in Oslo, stands not as the final answer to a historical question, but as a permanent monument to the spirit of inquiry, a physical argument that sometimes the most powerful message is the one you are willing to risk your life to send. From the grand, life-risking experiment of the Kon-Tiki, we turn now to a hidden message of an entirely different character, one that is playful, intellectual, and confined to the surface of a canvas. In the sophisticated courts of 16th century Europe, where artists were valued as much for their intellect as their skill, the Italian painter Giuseppe Arcimboldo created works that were guaranteed to stop a nobleman in his tracks. At first glance, his portraits are bizarre, almost surrealistic collages. A noble profile is revealed upon closer inspection to be composed entirely of plump summer fruits. A stern librarian's face is meticulously constructed from a stack of books. A grinning visage is a menagerie of forest creatures. These are not random assemblages, they are dazzling feats of visual wit and intricate symbolism, where the hidden message is the very act of perception itself. Arcimboldo challenges us to see both the forest and the trees, to recognize the human form while simultaneously appreciating the individual natural elements that constitute it. The immediate, surface-level delight of these paintings is their cleverness, a hallmark of the Mannerist period's love for artifice and intellectual games. A painting like The Librarian is a brilliant satire. From a distance, we see a stuffy, perhaps somewhat disheveled scholar, but as we approach, the man dissolves into the objects of his profession. His beard is made of feathers from quill pens, his body is a tapestry of book pages, and his face is crafted from the spines of leather-bound volumes. The hidden message here is a gentle mockery of pedantry, suggesting that a man can become so consumed by his work that he is indistinguishable from it. He is quite literally made of books. This visual pun would have been immensely entertaining to a courtly audience that appreciated layered meanings and inside jokes. Arcimboldo wasn't just painting a portrait, he was performing a kind of alchemy, transforming the mundane stuff of the world, fruits, flowers, fish, books, into a recognizably human image, all while winking at the viewer who was in on the joke. But these compositions are far more than just clever party tricks. They carry a deeper, philosophical weight rooted in the Renaissance understanding of the natural world and humanity's place within it. Arcimboldo's most famous series personifies the four seasons. Spring is a youthful face blossoming with flowers. Summer is a robust figure bursting with ripe, sun-warmed produce. Autumn is a mature character composed of grapes, apples, and gourds, and winter is an aged, gnarled visage of tree bark and a single, hardy citrus. These are not merely illustrative, they embody the concept of the macrocosm and the microcosm, the belief that the human body is a small-scale reflection of the entire universe. Just as the world goes through seasonal cycles of growth, abundance, decay, and dormancy, so too does human life. The hidden message is one of profound connection and impermanence. The vibrant, juicy fruits of summer will inevitably wrinkle and dry into the woody bark of winter. The painting becomes a memento mori, a reminder that our own vitality is as fleeting as the season it represents, and that we are fundamentally, physically composed of the same natural elements that sustain and surround us. This idea is pushed to its most complex and imperial level in Arcimboldo's portrait of Emperor Rudolf II, transformed into Vertumnus, the Roman god of the seasons, change, and vegetation. This is arguably Arcimboldo's masterpiece, a breathtaking compilation of the entire harvest. The emperor's face is a mosaic of ripe peaches, cherries, grapes, ears of wheat, and various vegetables, all rendered with such precise realism that each element is identifiable, yet they harmonize perfectly to create a dignified, almost divine likeness. The hidden message here is one of political propaganda, but of the most ingenious kind. By depicting Rudolf as Vertumnus, Arcimboldo is flattering the emperor's power in the most profound way possible. He is not just a ruler of men, he is the master of nature itself. His reign brings about a perpetual, golden age of abundance and harmony, where all seasons and all fruits coexist peacefully under his benevolent gaze. The portrait is a visual poem celebrating the emperor as the life-giving force for his entire domain, a ruler in perfect sync with the natural order. Ultimately, the most enduring hidden message in Arcimboldo's work is about the nature of creativity and the role of the artist. In an age where portraiture was typically about capturing a faithful likeness, Arcimboldo redefined the genre. He demonstrated that an artist could be an inventor, a philosopher, and a poet all at once. His paintings are puzzles that invite active viewing, rewarding careful observation with layers of meaning. They hide their message not in code or cipher, but in plain sight, using the recognizable objects of the everyday world to construct a deeper truth about our relationship to nature, time, and our own identities. The genius of Arcimboldo is that he makes the familiar strange and the strange familiar, forcing us to see the world and ourselves with renewed wonder. His portraits stand as a testament to the idea that art's greatest power may lie not in simply reflecting reality, but in rearranging it to reveal the hidden connections that bind us all together. After exploring the boundless potential of ancient seafarers and the playful intellectualism of Renaissance art, we find ourselves within the hallowed and seemingly silent space of one of London's most iconic landmarks. High up inside the magnificent dome of St. Paul's Cathedral, an architectural marvel conceived by Sir Christopher Wren after the Great Fire of London, lies a hidden message that is not meant to be seen but to be heard. It is known as the Whispering Gallery, and its effect is so magical it feels like a secret shared by the building itself. A person standing on one side of the circular gallery, their lips almost touching the wall, can murmur the faintest of phrases, and over 100 feet away, directly opposite, another person will hear that whisper with startling clarity, as if the speaker were standing right next to them. This is not a trick or an illusion. It is a stunning demonstration of acoustic physics, a hidden message encoded not in stone or ink, but in the elegant, invisible geometry of sound. The genius behind this phenomenon lies entirely in the perfect curve of the dome's interior. When Sir Christopher Wren designed this structure, completed in the early 18th century, his primary concerns were grandeur, stability, and creating a visual symbol of hope and resilience for a city reborn from ashes. The acoustics of the gallery were almost certainly an unintended consequence, a happy accident born from mathematical precision. The wall of the gallery forms a perfect circular enclosure, and its surface is incredibly smooth. When a sound is produced close to this wall, the sound waves do not radiate outward in all directions as they normally would. Instead, they cling to the curved surface, traveling along it in a phenomenon known as a whispering gallery wave. The sound essentially gets trapped and channeled around the circumference of the dome, losing very little energy as it goes because the smooth surface minimizes scattering and absorption. The result is that the whisper undertakes a journey around the vast space, arriving at the opposite point with its integrity largely intact, a private conversation leaping across a public chasm. This transforms the sacred space into something more than a place for sermons and song. It becomes an interactive experience, a piece of architectural magic that connects strangers in a moment of shared wonder. For centuries, visitors have climbed the 257 steps to the gallery to test it for themselves, their soft secrets and whispered jokes arcing through the air, connecting points that should be separated by silence. In a building designed for the projection of a single voice from the pulpit to a congregation below, the Whispering Gallery creates an intimate, alternative channel of communication. It is a democratic quirk of physics, allowing the quietest voice to travel just as far as the most powerful oration, a hidden message that everyone, regardless of status, can participate in and understand. The true message of the Whispering Gallery, therefore, extends beyond a simple lesson in acoustics. It serves as a beautiful metaphor for the unexpected consequences of genius. Christopher Wren was a man of science, an astronomer and mathematician, as well as an architect. While he may not have specifically calculated this effect, his insistence on geometric perfection created the conditions for it to exist. The gallery whispers to us about the hidden harmonies of the universe, the way that beauty and mathematical order can produce surprises that delight and connect us. It reminds us that even in our most monumental and serious endeavors, there is room for a touch of magic, a secret passage for sound that turns a grand cathedral into a place of intimate, whispering wonder, proving that sometimes the most profound messages are the ones we never intended to send. And now we arrive at our final hidden message, one that is not carved into stone or painted on a ceiling, but imagined across the very skin of the earth itself. It is a message written in the placement of monuments, a vast, invisible web connecting ancient sites across vast distances. This is the controversial and captivating concept of ley line. Imagine drawing a straight line on a map of the British countryside, connecting an ancient stone circle to a Neolithic burial mound, a medieval church built on a pagan site, and a prominent hilltop that has been a landmark for millennia. For those who believe, this is not a random exercise. It is the revelation of a hidden network, a secret geometry laid down by our ancestors for reasons we can only begin to fathom. The message of ley lines is perhaps the most speculative on our list, but it speaks to one of the most profound human impulses, the desire to see a pattern in the chaos, to find a deeper connection in the landscape our ancestors inhabited. The idea was first popularized in the 1920s by an English amateur archaeologist named Alfred Watkins. While looking at a map of Herefordshire, he had a sudden revelation, what he called a flood of ancestral memory. He saw that ancient sites, standing stones, old trackways, moats, and beacon hills seemed to fall into perfect straight alignments for miles across the countryside. He believed these were not accidental, but the remnants of ancient trading routes or pathways, navigated by sighting from one high point to the next. Watkins called these paths leys, from an old Saxon word for a cleared strip of land. His theory was largely practical. These lines were a Bronze Age navigation system, a practical message about how to travel efficiently through a wild and wooded landscape. The hidden message was one of survival and commerce, a practical network etched into the terrain. However, the concept of ley lines was soon infused with a more mystical energy. In the latter half of the 20th century, the idea was adopted by the burgeoning Earth Mysteries movement. Proponents began to see these alignments not as mere paths, but as channels of telluric or spiritual energy. In this view, ancient peoples, being more attuned to the natural world, could sense these currents of earth energy. They deliberately built their sacred sites, stone circles like Stonehenge, chambered tombs like West Kennet Long Barrow, and later, churches that often Christianize these powerful locations directly on these lines to tap into their power. The hidden message transformed from a practical map into a spiritual one, suggesting that the landscape itself is alive with invisible forces and that our ancestors possessed a lost science for interacting with them. This idea connects ley lines to similar concepts found in other cultures, such as the song lines of indigenous Australians or the dragon lines of Chinese Feng Shui, pointing toward a universal human tendency to perceive sacred geography. Skeptics, of course, offer a far more prosaic interpretation. They argue that given the sheer density of ancient sites across a place like Britain, finding straight-line alignments is statistically almost inevitable. It is a classic case of apophenia, the human tendency to perceive meaningful patterns in random data. If you have thousands of points on a map, you can always draw lines that connect a few of them. Furthermore, they point out that many of the sites used to prove ley lines are from vastly different time periods. A Neolithic mound might be connected to a medieval church and an Iron Age hill fort, making the idea of a single, intentional prehistoric plan highly unlikely. For the skeptic, the only hidden message is about the power of the human brain to create order where none exists, to weave a comforting narrative of intentional design over the unpredictable tapestry of history. Yet, even if we dismiss the literal existence of energy lines, the enduring power of the ley line theory carries its own important truth. It reveals a deep-seated human longing. We look at the monumental effort required to build these ancient sites, and we struggle to believe their placement was arbitrary. The idea that they are part of a grand, interconnected design is profoundly appealing. It suggests that our ancestors were not just scattered tribes struggling to survive, but were part of a coordinated culture with a sophisticated understanding of their world, both seen and unseen. The ley line is therefore a Rorschach test for our relationship with the past. Do we see a landscape of random, unconnected events, or one woven together with purpose and meaning? The message is not in the lines themselves, but in our need to draw them. It is a testament to our enduring desire to believe that the world is not a collection of isolated points, but a network of hidden connections, and that if we look closely enough at the map of our history, we might just find a signature of intelligent design, a whisper that every sacred stone and ancient mound is part of a conversation we are still learning how to hear. And so our journey through the whispers of history comes to a close for now. We have traveled from the depths of the sea with the Antikythera Mechanism to the celestial ceiling of the Dendera Temple, from the silent army of a Chinese emperor to the defiant whispers of Japanese hidden Christians. We have seen messages carved in stone, woven into string, painted on walls, and even encoded in the very flow of water through a desert city. What this incredible diversity tells us is unmistakable. History is not a single, settled story written in ink. It is a living, breathing, multi-layered puzzle, a conversation across time where each generation has the potential to discover a new voice, to hear a new whisper that changes our understanding of everything we thought we knew. These hidden messages reveal the full spectrum of human intention. Some, like the propaganda of the Bayeux Tapestry, were meant to shape the perception of power for centuries to come. Others, like the secret symbols in the Roman catacombs, were cries of faith and identity from a persecuted minority desperate to survive. Some, like the astronomical tables of the Dresden Codex, were the result of rigorous scientific observation, while the purpose of others, like the Phaistos Disc or the Rongo script, remains locked away, a tantalizing secret that keeps the past alive with mystery. From the playful intellect of Arcimboldo's portraits to the life or death importance of the Culper Ring's invisible ink, every hidden message, whether grand or intimate, was someone's attempt to communicate something they believed was vital, whether it was a truth, a belief, a warning, or a piece of their soul. This exploration is an invitation, a call to cultivate a new way of seeing the world around you. The next time you walk through a museum, don't just see the object behind the glass. Ask what it isn't telling you at first glance. Look at the brushstrokes on an old painting, the wear patterns on a stone tool, or the alignment of an ancient building. History's secrets are not confined to distant deserts or deep caves. They are embedded in the landscape of your own town, in the architecture of old buildings, and in the family heirlooms passed down through generations. Every artifact, every document, every mark left behind has a story, and often the most profound stories are the ones that require a little more effort to hear. The greatest lesson from these 30 mysteries is that our understanding of the past is always provisional, always evolving. The discovery of a single stone, like the Rosetta Stone, can unlock an entire civilization. The application of a new technology, like muon radiography, can reveal hidden chambers in the most studied monument on Earth. The past is not dead. It is merely waiting for us to ask the right questions, to look from a new angle, or to develop a new tool. The conversation between the present and the past is ongoing, and each of us has the potential to contribute to it, so we turn the conversation over to you. In the comments below, we want to hear your voice. What was the most captivating historical mystery from our list? Do you have a personal theory about the Voynich Manuscript or the purpose of the Nazca Lines? Perhaps there's a local legend or an unsolved artifact from your part of the world that you think holds a hidden message. Share your thoughts and join our community of history detectives. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows of the past, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because there are always more secrets to uncover, more puzzles to solve, and more whispers from history